ready?
All right. Calling the work session of July 22nd to order at 6:07 PM. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Brescher. Councilmember Coyle.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Patel.
Here.
Councilmember Patil.
Here.
Councilmember Pointer. Councilmember Shmuel.
Here. Madam Clerk, please read the adequate notice.
Adequate notice this meeting as required by the Open Public Meeting Act has been provided by the annual notice sent to the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger, Desi Talk, and News India Times on December 12th, 2023, and posted in the lobby municipal complex on that same date.
All right, going from the list for number 4, the first person is Marie Barber. Is it the first person on the list? Oh, is it Sue?
Sue, yes.
Sue,
Sue.
I'm sorry. Sue. Why did it say yeah? 'Cause
It says
like,
N, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, Sue.
Hello.
I didn't recognize your handwriting. But
Hello.
your name and address, please.
Sue Malone Barber, 85 Pleasant Avenue.
You're recognized.
Thank you. So, as you're probably aware, the planning board approved the master plan. It recommends lowering the building heights along Amboy Avenue, but still makes allowances for 4 stories, 45 feet development on large lots, defined as corner lots of half an acre or more with 100-foot depth on a corner. The Amboy Avenue analysis that was done with respect to the council's March 20th resolution to the planning board has also been completed and recommends the same thing. The new study basically told us all what we already know. 4-story buildings do not fit on small lots, and we need more places to park. According to the new study, there are 9 lots that meet the criteria for 4 stories as stated in the master plan. The new study also says, and also notes, that these lights are unlikely to be developed for various reasons, but of course, that is not guaranteed. So one might ask, if they are unlikely to be developed, then what is the problem with protecting the abutting residents' homes and the character of the neighborhood and making them all 3 stories, 35 feet? But that is not what the planning board recommended. And the door has, once again, been left open in favor of developers. And so after residents have given the same unwavering input on the 2016 redevelopment plan and on the 2024 master plan for more than a year, along with a delay of 4 months on the council's resolution to the planning board, we are in exactly the same place we have been for the last 8 years. So, we did meet with Mayor Joshi, and we're very grateful for his promise to introduce an ordinance that will amend the current AAR redevelopment plan, Ordinance 1936-2016, and lower the building heights along Amboy Avenue without exception to 3 stories, 35 feet. He discussed that there could be an allowance to go slightly higher if a developer seeks to create usable but uninhabitable rooftop space. That ordinance is on tonight's agenda, but it doesn't exactly say what the mayor promised. It's getting there, but I have a lot of questions. One, there are 4 building types specified in the Amboy Avenue redevelopment plan. The 4th building type is offices, and there's no mention of that building type at all, and that allows for 40 feet. 4 stories, 40 feet, 3.5, 40 feet, 40 feet being the really relevant point. I want to ask why and how does this hold up when each section in section 1, the first section calls for building type 1, 2, 3 to be a maximum height of 35 feet. And then the next section says, building type 1, 2, 3 shall be restricted to a maximum of 3.5 stories. So my question there is, if a developer comes in and says, I want to build 3.5 stories, but I need 40 feet, like, why doesn't that language combine and say 35 feet, 3.5 stories, whichever is fewer? So I think that exposes us. Now, I know this town knows how to write a tight ordinance, and I feel like that's exposure. Then the third point under section 1 is mixed use, building type 2, mixed use retail residential, and building type 3 residential shall be permitted to have either roof decks or rooftop access for residents and retail clients. Is that the half story? Or is there, can a developer say, well, what does this mean? And is that open to interpretation to go even higher than 3.5? So I feel like the language is here, but why isn't it together? Like, what is the half story? Is that the rooftop? Is that the rooftop plan? Like, what is that? And then finally, so the question about the fourth building type, why is that allowed to be?
There is 1 minute.
Why is that allowed to be 40 feet and 4 stories? And then I have a real question with regard to the master plan, which clearly states there's 4 stories, a 4-story recommendation for large lots on Amboy Avenue. So does this Amboy Avenue redevelopment plan hold up against the master plan if a developer wants to go higher? Like, what trumps what? And certainly, would it hold up on repeal if it was denied and then went to an appeals court? So those are my questions. I feel like this needs to be tighter, even though we are grateful that it's here at all. It's been a really long time, but it feels a little squishy, and I'm worried about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can answer my questions?
With your time's up, so I just wanted to recognize. Anybody who wants to answer any of these questions from the council? No? Okay. Yes, please.
I didn't hear that, sorry.
I was asking the council president if he wanted me to address some of those things. So to address your first issue, the 35 feet or 3.5 stories, the height requirement exists, right? If you can fit 3.5 stories into 35 feet, you're fine. After that, it becomes variance town. The same as with any other zoning ordinance. So if you can get that into the 35 feet with the minimum first floor requirements on height, then that is what you've got to deal with. And then you've got to go to the zoning board for variances and try to make your case for going higher. That is just how it works, and there's not anything that we can do to say you're not allowed to grant variances ever to the zoning board. That's what the zoning board's there for.
So
The half
those
story-
2 points aren't
Sorry,
conflict?
stop.
Okay.
You're not, your time is up.
Okay,
You can't talk.
okay.
Yeah, we can't exactly engage. Those 2 points aren't in conflict, right? A half story.
Are not?
They're not.
Sorry, I can't, I have a
So
hearing thing.
I'm going to ask you to sit down if you keep talking, okay?
Okay,
Because-
I just didn't hear him.
Yeah, that's fine.
Those 2 points are not in conflict, okay? A half story is not a habitable story. It's generally used for attic space, things of that nature. So that is where that language comes in. But the 3 stories are what was asked for and what that restricts it to, okay? The second issue that I can address for you is, does it hold up against the master plan? And the answer is yes, okay? So what happens with the master plan and with any of these zoning ordinances is that it will be, if it's passed on first reading, it's sent to the planning board for their review per the statute. If they say, yes, this is all okay, then it's passed and it becomes part of the zoning ordinance. If they say, yes, but you have to address this issue, it can also be passed without amending it at all and with the language that's been presented, so long as an accompanying statement of reasons for not exactly complying with the master plan is also passed at that same meeting in a resolution, okay? So that's, the master plan isn't law. The master plan is a suggestion for how the development of the town should be, and it provides a framework that you should work within, because a lot of time, effort, and planning goes into developing a master plan. That doesn't mean that it is sacrosanct and you can't do anything outside of the master plan. You just have to make sure that you justify why you're doing it and how you're doing it. So if the master plan doesn't comport with what the council feels is necessary for this area and what the people have asked for, the ordinance can do that so long as the correct steps are followed. Those were the two. I don't think I can answer on the fourth building type, the 40-foot allowance. I do think Hank, you can address that issue? Okay, so Hank would have to address that issue.
So if you sit down, I'll have Hank come up to
Okay.
the podium.
All right, thank you.
I don't think she had a fourth, I think it was just three.
It was just, yeah.
Okay.
The issue of whether or not you can seek a variance to go higher than the 35 feet, if you exceed 10 feet or 10%, you create a D variance, and the boards are not allowed to grant any kind of D variance change unless you amend the redevelopment plan.
Okay.
So that would solve that.
Yep.
And so does that answer the 40 feet question as to why, or is that the recommendation from the planner that?
Recommendation was at 35 feet. That's what the AAR zone had said way back when at 2.5 story. So if you want to have retail or commercial on the ground floor, you're looking at like a 12-foot to maybe 13-foot ceiling. Then you have 2 floors of residential. It would just leave space in the attic area, that 5 foot of half story. It would be uninhabitable. Or you could create that space for if you're going to sit up there or whatever you're going to do and have a space on the roof.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
But you can't grant a D variance to a redevelopment plan.
Okay.
All
So
right.
no D variance on redevelopment plan. Next person online, Joel Bassoff.
Joel Bassoff, 17 Beach Lane. Several
recognized?
questions. One, is there an attitude among the council and the administration that if residents' questions are ignored long enough, that the residents will just forget about it and go away? And here's some questions why I raised that. Question number one, regarding the budget, this has been asked many times before. Why did Edison miss the deadline set by the local finance board for introducing and adopting a budget? Another question about warehouses, distribution centers, and fulfillment centers. When is the council going to adopt an ordinance that brings the definitions into the 21st century? There's now been an application filed with the Technical Review Committee for a facility on Whitman Avenue. That's across the street from single-family residential. How many more are we going to wait for before the council brings the definitions into the 21st century so that there's a chance of limiting truck traffic on residential streets? And finally, Amboy Avenue, it looks like the current draft of an ordinance is smoke and mirrors. When is the council going to implement the will of the residents of Clara Barton and just limit building heights to 3 stories, period? The council has the power to do it. Yes, there was a contrary recommendation from the planning board and from the planning board's consultant, but the council doesn't have to follow that. You have ample reasons for putting in your minutes why you will just repeal the ordinance that allows for 4 stories and limit development to 3 stories. So those are the questions. I'd appreciate answers. Thanks.
Thank you, Joel. Anybody from the council wants to take them? You can answer the budget question.
Yeah, so when you were last here in May, you asked the question about the budget and why we missed the deadline, and I expressed to you that we didn't actually miss the deadline, that we had a difference of opinion. I did speak with Ken about this. I did ask him, since you won't take our word for it, that we're in compliance with all the applicable budget submission deadlines. I don't know if Ken can address that issue. Did we miss the budget deadline, and have we somehow violated when we're supposed to get our budget done?
Let me just begin, and I'll give it over to Ken. We have not violated anything in terms of the law. We've submitted all of our budget documents within the appropriate time frame, but certainly Mr. Roberts can add to that.
Well, what you're referring to for the budget deadlines is prescribed by the state. The local finance board, through the Division of Local Government Services, has the ability to extend the deadlines, which they have in the past several years. And those are merely suggestive. There are communities who still haven't introduced, let alone adopt, their 2024 budgets yet. So we have not missed a deadline. We've had our budget approved and signed off by the state without any negative comment or feedback.
The reason I ask is that there was a local finance notice that was issued in December of 2023 that did extend the deadlines, but Edison didn't even meet those extended deadlines under the local finance notice. And I'd add also in that regard, the Edison Charter actually calls for public hearings in November prior to a new calendar year, public hearings where the various departments would make their requests for funding for the upcoming year.
Council
we don't do
President, I
that.
don't necessarily want it to be a back and
Yeah,
forth.
Council President, just
sorry.
point of order.
Yeah.
If we're going to do back and forth for him, we need to do it for everybody. It's
Yeah,
just-
that is true.
Well,
Joel,
yeah, except
unfortunately,
my time-
you're not recognized. I will let,
Okay.
I will recognize you if you finish the thought, and then I'll recognize Joel.
Sure. I mean, I don't mean to be repetitive, but we've answered it. We submitted it. We actually got the approval from the local finance board. Our budget's been approved.
And I would take the word of a professional who deals with this regularly, that we are in compliance. I don't believe we are not in compliance, as he stated that other towns are still behind, and they haven't moved as far that we have. So I would like to trust the professionals that we hired for this job. All right. If you want to say something, Joel.
Well, I also had a question about,
He still has time, right? Okay.
yeah, I also had a question about the warehouse definitions.
Yeah,
distribution centers,
we were gonna
fulfillment
get there.
centers,
I just
and
want-
Amboy Avenue.
Yeah, okay. The warehouse, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. It is a process. Unfortunately, I don't have a timeline on it. We are working on it. I know that's not an answer that you're looking for, but that is the answer that we have. And then the Amboy Ave, I understand that is your opinion, but I think the administration has worked really hard with the community. They have met with them. This is not just one portion of the community's request. Everything they want, they get. I think it's some compromises, plus a professional was hired to do this study, as I understand. Is that correct, Hank? Oh, I would like you to come up to the board, but okay. So this is something, it's a process. We have done the process to get the answer that we're looking for. I understand, again, you're not happy with the answer that we got, but this is what was returned to us based on the study that a professional did. And we have to make judgment call on that. We cannot just, just make up whatever we like. I understand we do have something that we have to fall back on to say, hey, this is the study was done, this is what they recommend, and where we're gonna go from there. Any other council members that would like to speak on this? All right, seeing none, moving on to the next person. Morris Kaplan.
Good evening. I just want
Can I
to
just
tell
get
you,
your address, Morris?
pardon?
Your address, please.
41 Marlett Avenue East,
You're recognized.
Edison. About me, I was a volunteer firefighter for 58 years, chief of 4. I just have to get this off my chest, and that's why I'm here. The township and the Edison Fire Department disrespected the volunteers and disrespect the volunteers. Recently, we had a fellow firefighter pass away. We requested a fire truck. What we received was a tack van and a young man who was helpful, not in uniform, show up. I think that's disrespectful. Second of all, Metuchen sent firefighters, okay? He was a veteran. Veteran showed up. We, as volunteers, and a man that put in 35 years, cannot get a fire truck from the township of Edison. No matter where you go in the United States, if you're a volunteer firefighter, I went to California and I stopped at a firehouse and I said, could you come to my grandson's birthday? They said, we don't do this. I said, listen, I'm a volunteer in Edison. I was chief. Could you please come? They said, brother, we'll come. That is the difference. And here, we just celebrated 100 years, Edison Volunteer Fire Company. Not one mention of the 100 years we put in. I have a history that I would like to pass out. The young lady said she would take them and pass it out and give you a little insight of the Edison Volunteer Fire Company. We've provided protection to the residents. We had no career firefighters. We did JFK. We did Roosevelt Hospital. We did Menlo Park. We served well. And they disrespect. And not one mention of the 100 years that we put in. And when we have a fellow firefighter pass away, not one time, not one career firefighter showed up. That's totally disrespectful. Guys served with him. We put guys on. When I was chief, 4 of the people that I put in became chiefs in this town, paid. The other disrespect is that they gave me a proclamation from the town, okay? This is it, right? For 50 years of service. You know how it came? Just like so much throw out of paper. In the mail. We had a dinner. Do you think somebody showed up from the town? No. That's no way to treat the volunteers. I was putting up with this stuff for a long time. But when it came to this funeral, and a man putting 35 years in and nobody showed up, and we got a tack van, totally disrespectful. 100 years of service, not one mention. You open up parks and stuff, and you have big thing on Oak Tree Road. 100 years, nothing. It's just totally disrespectful. Years ago, they respected us. I put 25 years in. They had me in town hall right here, gave me a plaque, gave me a citation. We did a lot. We bought our own equipment. We went on the corner. And all the equipment that we bought, and we were like the first ones to have 1- and 3-inch hose, automatic nozzles, Rich Fire, K-tools, rabbit tools, gas meters, before anybody. And we bought this on our own. We did a lot, but we don't get any respect. I thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Morris.
Council President, may I say? First of all, I want to thank and recognize Mr. Kaplan for all the years of service he has put in as a volunteer firefighter and for his passion about the work that he did and his fellow volunteer firefighters have done. This is an unacceptable, I don't know if it's an oversight, if it's protocol or what, but it really, to me, is unacceptable. And I'm wondering if there is any kind of remediation that can be done about this situation. It's not right. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President.
Council President,
Councilman
I'd like to echo my colleague and and thank Chief Morris for all your hard work. Could you say to me your last name again? Because I wrote your first name as Morris.
Kaplan.
The last
Kaplan.
name is Kaplan, K-A-P-L-A-N.
Kaplan.
Thank you.
And we did ask, and all they sent us was one TAC van. And TAC van don't do it. They could have sent us a fire truck, which they didn't. It's total disrespect. I mean, if a brother firefighter passes away and he put 35 years in town, we work 24 hours a day. We were always on call. I remember going to Durham Woods. I spent the whole night there, and then I had to go open my gas station on 27 of Parsons, which I was there for 38 years. And I had to work another half a day. But that's a thing of the past. We did it because we wanted to do it. But when it comes to somebody
Thank you, Mr.
passing
Kaplan.
away-
Unfortunately, your time is up, so I would ask you to sit down, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Schmo.
Thank you. I just want to thank Mr. Kaplan.
Mr. Kaplan, as for me, I want to thank you for all your services, and I agree. If there was any disrespect, I believe the town will try to remedify the situation, rectify it if we can. I am not sure what the process and how we ended up in this situation, but I'm sorry that we did. If we could correct it, I would love to. All right, Mr. Kaplan.
Council President, is the battalion chief, do you have anything to add to this in terms of what kind of remediation might be possible?
Council President and Council Vice President, what I would like to do is, the administration's point of view is look into this, exactly what happened, and if such request was made, that we would obviously look into and discuss that with the mayor as a public safety director and the fire chief who's not here tonight. I don't know if there's any other information that we could share with you tonight.
Okay, let's just have a discussion and make sure that we have a policy in place as to.
Absolutely, and I'm sorry that that happened.
Thank you.
Council President,
Council.
Fire Chief Kaplan, I am sorry to hear this, and I hope it was a miscommunication. Our Chief, Andy Toth, is usually on top of this. I thank you for your service and your family and all the work you've done. Long before they were paid, there were volunteers who did all this work, and thank you for all the time you did in building the fire department.
All right, moving on to the next person in line, John Vitale. Just your name and address, sir.
John Vitale, 228 Central Avenue.
You're recognized.
08817. I'd like to briefly comment about the item on tonight's agenda regarding the Stelton neighborhood parking permits. First, thanks to Councilmember Harris for adding this item. I'm a 45-year resident of Edison. About 40 years ago, I was one of 3 residents who worked with the council to draft the original ordinance for residential permit parking in the neighborhood adjacent to the train station. The purpose of the ordinance has always been to prevent commuter parking on those residential streets. Since the ordinance was first passed, the residents in the Edison Police Division have successfully worked together to keep the streets around the train station mostly free of parking, commuter parking. Unfortunately, during the past 16 months, that collaboration has hit a disagreeable problem. So what we have here is a tale of 2 ordinances. Beginning in March 2023, the resident at 12 Lenox Street has been giving a visitor's permit to a commuter who parks on Lenox and uses the train station on almost a daily basis. The traffic unit, starting with Sergeant Winters, then Lieutenant Turner, and now Captain Morith, has said that the 12 Lenox resident using the visitor's permit for routine on-street parking by a commuter is not a violation of the ordinance. Meanwhile, presumably based on that same ordinance, the traffic unit has directed about 4 other residents who were recently giving their permits to commuters for on-street parking to stop. Those residents have stopped, as if there's some kind of double standard. With police department approval, the resident at 12 Lenox Street continues to give a visitor's permit to a commuter nearly every weekday. Same ordinance, same behavior from different residents, 2 very different police enforcement reactions. We believe the best way to fix this is to strengthen the ordinance language so the police have a clear understanding about how to enforce the ordinance regarding the use of visitors' permits for ongoing on-street parking by commuters. As one township communication to residents states, due to abuses of resident and visitors' parking permits, existing rules will be enforced. Under no circumstances may visitor permits be used for commuter parking. Our hope is that the council will acknowledge that this double standard approach to enforcing the ordinance would stop, and that the best way to stop it is to strengthen the ordinance language as we propose. As we've done several times in the past, we volunteer to work with the council to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vitale, do you have those suggestions? Did you email it? Because I'm not sure. Okay, yeah, if you can email it to the Madam Clerk, we can try to incorporate it, because I do agree that we shouldn't have two different standards in terms of enforcement. All right. Anybody else that would like to speak to this? All right. Moving on to Akhtar Nasser. Name and address, please.
Akhtar Nasser, Pleasant Avenue.
You're recognized.
It's been a minute for Clara Barton residents to breathe over the 4-story building height. It was hailed as one way to redevelop Amboy Avenue, but it crashed and burned. At this very moment, and 8 years prior, anyone on Amboy Avenue could have built 4 stories, but they chose not to, even with a thriving economy. This shows that building height is not what is stifling redevelopment, and anyone that stands by this argument better take a crash course in economics. In 8 years, we have only had 2 applications in 4-story buildings and 1 for a 3-story building. The 4-story building that they've developed has not spurred any redevelopment. Rather, if you look objectively, there's actually more for sale, for lease buildings on Amboy Avenue than any other time. And before we celebrate that one building was built during the course of 8 years under the redevelopment, let's note the applicant had planned to develop that vacant land since 2010 with 2 stories, 3 stories, and then finally 4 stories when it got greedy. For the last 2 years, Clara Barton residents have gone to the master plan meetings and asked for 4-story building heights to be removed. The chair of the plan board was aware that Clara Barton residents continued to attend, addressing any more Clara Barton residents, but yet we were not listened to. Had they listened, the study that was initiated by the council resolution would have been ordered 2 years ago, not last minute. This makes us suspicious. Who is pushing for the 4 stories and why? We keep getting the narratives that we are, the residents, stifling millions of dollars to the area without 4-story development, or that it's not feasible to go ahead and develop anything when you're not allowing 4-story development. None of these claims are documented. By the way, the study that we just got back validated everything that the residents have continued to say. We have wasted so much time from February to now. The whole process that we have gone through since February, in which the council rejected the ability to do appeal on the ordinance for 2 months, then to magically figure out that we could do a resolution to request a study, that all seems just like a game. Even the way that the resolution was done seems like a game. We asked that there be a time period for the study. It's supposed to be, I believe, 45 days, but somehow we put it in without a time frame. So my spidey sense is telling me that something's a little up and wrong here. I want to thank the mayor for getting involved and supporting us, saying that he would get rid of the 4-story buildings. On our 4th meeting with him, he said that in mid-July at the planning board, somehow everything will magically be resolved and the 4-story issue will be gone. Unfortunately, this wasn't true. We did get some suggested language removal of the 4 stories, but not across everywhere. So that presents a huge problem. We asked for a last-minute meeting last Thursday, and that was our 5th meeting with the mayor. And before we even spoke, the mayor knew exactly why we were there, and he had already told us that he was working on an ordinance that you guys have before you. Not quite sure why everything didn't get magically done with the master plan, and as was promised the previous week, but it's clear that if he's meeting with us for 5 times, that he supports us. Now, when you look at the ordinance, we want to be perfectly clear that no story buildings of any kind are permitted anywhere on Amboy Avenue. As Sonia stated, downtowns typically have 35 tall buildings, so I'm not even sure why we had taller buildings to begin with. The other thing I want to keep in mind is the maximum height of any building should be 35 feet, nothing more, with the ability to have a 0.5-story addition for a rooftop deck where nobody will live. In the current ordinance that we were only able to review just 1 hour ago, I am not sure that the ordinance is clear and meets the conditions that we've been talking about. For instance, Section 1, Building Type 3, says 3.5 stories. It's ambiguous, and I think it should be redone as saying Building Type 3 with 3 stories, in parentheses, 35 feet, and an optional 0.5 story for rooftop access that is non-habitable. The other thing that's missing from here is building type 4, which allows for 40 feet. I would like that also to be on this to say that it can only be 35 feet. Again, I want to thank the mayor, Sonia, Kat, and Mr. Deal for the support. Is there any way that we can button up this ordinance so it meets what we've been fighting for 8 years? Thank you.
Thank you, up there. Any questions that you want to answer?
Council President, I have it on my discussion items. I know several people are here to talk about it, so I'm not going to elaborate at this moment. I just want to be courteous to let you know I will discuss it, but I don't want to take away from their time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President.
All right,
So what about the building number 4 that I was saying about the 40 feet? I'm not sure if that was part of what you were going to talk about, or I think that should be universal, 35 feet across there, so there is no discussion, or the 0.5, the balcony area. I think that should be set as an optional, I believe. Otherwise, I think that somebody might say, oh, well, it's 3.5. You know what, let's just go to a 4th story, because it's 3.5, 4 stories, it's very close to each other. So I just feel like there should be some buttoning up. I don't know, I'm guessing that none of you guys feel like it needs to be buttoned up.
I mean, we have our opinion, but we can,
So just to repeat what Hank addressed earlier, with a 35-foot maximum building height, if you go above 10% of the maximum building height, it triggers a D variance, and a D variance in a redevelopment area is not permitted. So that would be 38.5 feet. They could go to the zoning board and try and get that extra 3.4 feet, but with a maximum building height of 35 feet, it keeps it below that number.
But building type 4 already has 40 feet, and that has not been spoken about in this ordinance. So,
This is what I said before, is I don't have an answer for that particular aspect of
so
it.
can we get an answer to that?
unfortunately, we didn't develop the suggestions. I think that came to us from the planning board. We did not, come together and write that particular language, if that's the suggestion. This is what was presented to us from the planning board, and this is what we're voting on. So if we can either vote it down and then work on it completely fresh, which is a lot of the council members feel, that we could vote it down and do a comprehensive plan all over again. But I believe Clara Barton will be really unhappy about that because we're not moving forward. So there is always a compromise where we have to make. Either we move forward and take what we have on the table, or we delay and, people be unhappy. So it's a rock and a hard place. Either way we go, there's going to be a compromises. All right.
All right, thank you.
Council President, I just want to.
Councilman Barton, you recognize?
Thank you, Council President. I was to some extent involved, I was getting the feed on and off what was happening with the Clara Barton 3-story, 4-story. If you all remember, a few months ago, we moved the resolution saying repeal the ordinance. And this council expected some sort of the report from the planning board in a very short time, 45 days, didn't happen. It triggered another study. But on the docket, we don't have the outcome of that study, nowhere. This ordinance lands in the email box at 4 o'clock. This ordinance is very, very important for the residents of the Clara Barton. When this topic is so sensitive, and you can see the audience, they care their neighborhood. We have spent almost 6 months going back and forth on this topic. I don't know why it is so hard for us to get to the bottom of it, start with 3-story. If at all you want to go back to the 4 stories, again, this council has a power to change that. But let's start from the basic. It didn't happen. Here are my objections. All along, we gave a good reason saying, hey, because our master plan is not up to the mark, the developer is going to the court, they appeal, the court overthrows the case, they end up building what they desire. We're in the same position as of today. There's a tall promise of 100 days master plan. We are in 2.5 years, much longer, yet that is not yet fully ingrained what the future of Edison stands for. And Clara Barton is a classic example of that. So my point here is there a true intent to help the resident? Or this is just a wishy-washy solution? Let's start with something and just push it. I heard Council President saying it's going to take more time if we don't adopt this. My question is why it took even 3 months for us to get here. We could have easily repealed and then moved forward with a good thought process. We could have formed a subcommittee. We could have sat with the residents of Clara Barton, which I know Mayor did. There were several meetings happened. Some of us also individually met the residents. We heard them, but yet here is the day. We are not there. And I'm very disappointed, especially when it's a sensitive issue, we cannot put something on the agenda without giving through thought, without analyzing what's the impact, whether it's not just about the master plan, but on the entire Clara Barton section. My worry here is, because we are now talking up in public, there are people who are watching. You will anticipate few applications, they will be sneaked in. And here you go. Now we'll have the spot zoning. You'll have the master plan, they will go to court, they will give the reference, here you go. It will be overturned. So no matter what we do, we'll end up getting 4-story, even though there is a desire to get 3-story. So if this council doesn't act in good faith and serve the resident, this will never happen. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Patel. Moving on, anybody else that would like to speak? All right, thank you. Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Keith Ryan, 56 Lafayette Avenue.
You're recognized.
I just have a couple questions. I've been involved with these, a lot of people in Clara Barton, and great people that really care about their community. So after doing some work with them and do some talking, and I talked to other residents back and forth, and I'm going to speak for some of our residents. They asked me some questions. Now, we're bringing up all these numbers and everything else about this, so 3 stories, 4 stories. I agree with all that stuff and everything that has to do with a lot of this stuff with numbers. We'll just call it basically numbers. But a lot of people are asking me some basic questions. So these are some of the questions that were asked is, what benefit does this master plan bring to Clara Barton? The community. What benefit does it bring us? We have people here that aren't happy. Now, a lot of people aren't happy, but they don't make it here all the time. They got jobs, they got other things to do. And they want to, why is it being forced on us? Now, I agree with them people about the 4 stories, 3 stories. I don't want any stories. 2 stories, whatever. I agree with that. So why is it being pushed on us? What is the benefit of this? How does it benefit the people out here if they're here going against it? Why does the government want to push this on us? And if we do this, are there any adjustments to the infrastructure? We are at, and I can speak for my street on Lafayette. We have brownouts regularly when there's storms or anything else like that. Flooding on my side of Lafayette, that's been like that since I lived there. When it rains or something like that, it pours, it comes all the way down Echo. We have this much water coming down our road. We call it township. So we didn't even fix problems that are years old. We're going to create new ones. We don't have any solutions. These are the things that people are asking me. And not to mention the obvious, parking, traffic, and schools. Just like everybody else, it's like nobody builds schools. We convert schools to something else. We don't build new ones. And then do we have another thing here? We have another thing. This is going to be a touchy one. But people ask me, it's like, why is there a council member involved in property sales? Some people did the research, and a lot of people feel that's a conflict of interest. Those are my questions. I'm looking for answers now. But
thank you, Keith. Those are your questions, all right? Any council members that would want to take it? Okay. As for what benefits does the master plan?
Yes.
Master plan is more of a guidance, and it's supposed to, based on the study that the planning board does and approves, they are essentially setting the guidance for the town as to give someone who's looking into coming into the town and invest or to plan anything to invest money in. They want to know what the town needs. And that's what the master plan is supposed to do for the whole town, not necessarily just
So this master plan is for the investors, not for the residents?
It's a guiding.
That's how it sounds.
Guiding
Okay.
plan.
All right.
It's a guiding plan to communicate with each other as to what we're doing. Because if we don't have a master plan, You don't know what the town is building. I don't know what the town is building. We don't have a cohesive vision, and ultimately we build, not necessarily to the plan. It's a master plan, is a guiding principle.
A master plan is essentially there to lay out a roadwork for, or a roadmap for the future development of the town, so that you don't get patchwork zoning laws that don't necessarily mesh well with each other, so that you don't end up with things coming into the town that don't fit in the neighborhoods that they get access
like these
to.
apartments.
So that investors can understand what they can reasonably ask for in certain areas and what they can't, so that the town can plan future roadway expansions, so that it can plan future development expansions, open space expansions, park expansions, knowing what the use and restrictions are on those parts of the town that they want to expand into and that people want to develop, because there's always a push and pull on that, and there's always a little bit of give and take when you're talking about a growing and popular, quite frankly, location like Edison. So that is the balancing act that the master plan kind of has to thread. So it's not just for any one particular group, but it's to make sure that all of those conflicting interests are essentially developed in a way that is sustainable, that is in the best interest of both the business community and, more importantly, the residents, so that you don't have some of those issues. So that's really what a master plan is
The
for.
master plan will also
But you can't
serve.
bring it
Oh,
up
one
as a
sec,
town,
Keith, we can't both be talking. So let me answer your questions, because you asked the questions.
No, I was just responding.
Council President, point of order.
Yeah,
I don't mind it.
Keith.
We doing the back and forth.
I don't want to do back and forth.
Or not. That's
It's
just
either
one-
I'm talking or you're talking, one way or the other. You have more questions, you can ask me right now, and I'll wait for it. Do you have any more questions?
no.
Okay. All right, so let me continue answering the questions that you asked. Now, the master plan will also help us with the infrastructure. If we know we're building something, we can plan for it. That will be the plan of the master plan. We will see, hey, we need to grow as a town. We can't stay still, because if we do, we're going to become stale and not appropriately to the times that we need to be. We will not have enough housing when we need it. We might not have enough schools, like you pointed out. So if we know, hey, we're going to be growing around this much, we need more schools, we need more infrastructure, we need to worry about, the sewage. Pretty much everything needs to be planned out, and that's what the master plan helps us do. In terms of the situation with the Lafayette, Sonia, do you have anything to add with the Lafayette flooding? Okay, she does not. And the traffic, parking, school, again, this will all be issues that should be tackled with a good master plan. They should be worried about this. Hey, if we're going to be building this, how are we going to worry about the parking? Where are the cars going to go? If we build this here, how much traffic would it build? This is all something that should be thought out. Again, that is why it's called a master plan. We think these through, so that way when we build it, we don't run into issues, hopefully. And that will be it. Sorry, Keith, that's all I have for you. All right.
Okay, just one more question.
Your time is up, sorry,
Okay.
Keith, yeah. All right. Yeah, but you got to raise your hand. There were other people that were ahead too. You can come on up.
Hello, I'm Anita from 20 Parker Road.
You recognize Anita?
So I'm here to talk about garbage collection. So the township collects my garbage today and assesses me a tax based on my property value. But my neighbor who lives back street, they're able to use a private provider. I end up paying 3 times as much as what a private provider would charge me if I use them. So, and same goes for all of the residents on my street. We are not able to use a private provider. We end up paying significantly more because the township is collecting our garbage. And we've discussed this a couple of times before. I've raised it with some council people. And we were here in the last council meeting and we brought this up and the council said you'd look into this. So I'm here to ask if you have an update for us. We really would like to understand what the council is doing to make this more fair, because I don't think it's fair that I have to pay more to the township compared to some of the other residents who are able to use a private provider. I should also be allowed to use a private provider and pay what the free market allows me to pay for the same service. But it's not fair that the township is imposing their service on us for a significantly higher price and not giving us that choice when some other residents are allowed to have that choice. So I would like to know what the council is doing to make this more fair for those of us who are not currently able to get the private service.
I'm going to ask the legal counsel to help me out here as to what our options are.
Sorry.
So what can we do as a town to help alleviate the situation?
So the short answer is not a whole lot unless you want to suspend garbage service. Okay. So I did spend some time after the last time the residents were here asking about how it works and why some areas are private, some are public, and why there's a price discrepancy. And that price discrepancy actually goes both ways. There are residents with private collection who pay more than some residents with municipal collection as well. There are also some additional issues with private collection with regards to accountability, and there's been a number of complaints about that. We don't hear those because they have nothing to do with the township itself. So the issue with saying, okay, well, everyone can go out and get their own private collection done, essentially means that the collection that the township pays for ends up not being funded, and that money has to come from somewhere else, which the way that it's done as an ad valorem tax, your property value determines what the cost is, right? Is the same way that all property taxes are done. You pay a higher percentage because your property is more valuable, right? Or you pay more money because your property is more valuable. That's why $1 million house has higher property taxes than a $250,000 house in the same town, and why different percentages that go to schools, libraries, to the town itself. So it looks like what happened, at least from a historical perspective, is in roughly the 70s, Edison began to establish garbage districts, areas in which collection would take place. Those have expanded over the years, and it doesn't encompass the entirety of the township as of yet. It may at some point, if the council decides that they're just going to handle municipal collection solely through the municipality, it may reduce. But if it reduces again, that means that those funds won't be available. It doesn't change really the cost for any individual resident. If you stop collecting here, it just compresses them. Yes, you have less that you have to do, but does it without some kind of actual economic study to tell me what that ends up being, I can't answer you as to what would be the impact of suspending service in a certain district and allowing it to go private, or how that would play out if eventually it phased out, or if you eventually expanded all the way out. That would be something that the township would have to take a look at and say, how do we want to handle our garbage collection? Some townships do purely municipal. Some townships have gone entirely private. And the costs are there, but there's also drawbacks to that.
So, like you heard from the council, it's not an easy fix, just like pretty much anything. I'm not sure what the right solution is. Anybody else would like to speak? I know Councilman Patel has really looked into this as well.
First, thank you for coming tonight to speak. 20 Parker Road, you said? And you're not in district. You paid for private today, correct?
No.
You have public garbage picked up?
Yes.
So the township picks up your garbage?
Yes, and I pay 3 times as much as what the private provider that I got a quote from is offering to do the same thing for. I pay $1,100 today garbage tax.
Anita, your time's up, so unfortunately you won't be able to answer anymore. So
Okay.
what would you like to say?
If everybody had a choice to pick their own vendor. The mapping alone would be chaos. We have enough problems. And again, I hear you out. I'm not looking for you to comment, and I could speak to you offline. But think about 33,000 homes picking whoever they want when they want, and the snow plowing and the storm management and the flow processes of work. It would be very challenging. Maybe that's one of the scenarios. But I certainly will look into it. The garbage district and the private from public has always been a very deep 1940s discussion that started way back when, where one district can be private over another. But I'll ask the council president and support him looking into this.
Anita, I think we did talk about this a long time back when I walked to your house and we talked about this. And this was something that you brought up even back then. And I looked into it, and all I essentially found out at the time was it's a historical change, and it's really complicated to change it. But I am open to looking into it. But like Councilman Coyle suggested, I don't think we can do a patchwork. Like, we can't let half people pick resident. I mean, unfortunately, you can't. There's a portion of the town that does already have a choice, and I'm not sure as to how that ended up in that situation. But we could looking into expanding it to them so it's even across the board, or completely removing it. I don't necessarily agree with having both as a choice, because then it just adds to the work without making any more efficiency for the township.
And Council President, last, I just want to add that as we have Public Works handling your garbage, let's not forget during the storm, they're also pushing snow, so that you're getting a dual service at the same time on that day. Just throwing that, the extra complication at you as one department may be handling three things for you as a taxpayer, and,
Council,
also garbage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Coyle. Is there a possibility of having like a flat charge for tax collection and having a tax for DPW separate? So it's not linked.
So, I'm sorry, a flat charge for tax collection?
I mean, for the garbage collection, and then having a DPW charge for tax, like a separate DPW charge.
I would have to look into how that would work, but I don't believe it's permissible.
Okay.
Obviously, I can look into it. I don't think it's permissible with how you have to assess the costs for that under the statutes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Nita. We will look further into it, but fortunately, it is not easy solution. Anybody else that would like to speak? You can come on.
Good afternoon. My name is Belmy Rivas.
Can you speak closer to the mic, please?
My name is Belmy Rivas. I
Belmy
moved into
Rivas.
52 Lafayette.
You're recognized.
I moved in a year ago. The reason I moved in, I came from New York, downtown Brooklyn, which is where all the big buildings are at. I moved into my block because it was a very low block, and I like to see the views and stuff like that. So now with a 4-story or 3-story, it's blocking off the views. That's one. 2, where I used to live was a 3-story, and the parking there was also not very good about that. So with everything that's coming, am I gonna relive this again? Like, I moved from there to over here, so we don't go through that. So what's gonna happen with that scenario? Like, how am I benefited now from moving there to here? Like, doesn't seem to be a big change for me in that scenario. So from 3 stories, how many people would be living there? How many cars are we talking? It's basically going right back to where I came from. So that's my biggest concern right now, that I'm just like, what was the point of me investing my money into my own house if I have to relive something that I was living back home? And I have a baby, so like, it's just not my vision or my plan that I came to live in.
I understand.
Over here. So that's what I want you guys to take into consideration. And I'm probably not the only one. It is a new house, but again, people are also migrating over here to live that low count life. So I just want you guys to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President,
Councilman Coyle?
I just want to thank her for coming in and renting and choosing to buy in Edison. Some people have commented that renting is not good, and I'm thankful you decided to make Edison your home.
Good evening, Diana Jaffe, 86 Laurel Hollow Court.
You're recognized.
It's been about a year. I've been coming up here about the sightline from Inman Avenue and Old Raritan Road. I was told there was an ordinance being written. I don't see it. Can somebody explain what's going on, why this ordinance hasn't been written? The sightline is worse than ever. The hedges are higher. The blind spots are worse. And I'm standing up here, I feel like I'm just nagging and going over and over and over again. This is dangerous. Where's the ordinance? Can somebody talk to me?
Sonia, can you answer that?
Sure. There is an upcoming meeting between our internal team to discuss the sightline triangles you're referring to. So that's forthcoming. I believe it's this week. I was just looking in my calendar. So we're going to discuss that this week.
What exactly are we discussing?
Well, we're discussing the issues with the site and the restriction. So once we come to an agreement, we'll bring a recommendation to the council.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Marianne Hennessy, Carmelo Drive.
You recognize Marianne.
You're not going to like me. I know you're not. I feel sorry for that lady waiting so long to get this resolved. And all I can say is, God forbid there's a major accident at that intersection because nothing's been done since she started asking for it. My major issue is you want a second work order for the little building at the end of Central Avenue for cheerleaders and the football team. Why did this town not hire a project manager before you even conceived of doing anything, where that project manager would overlook things and get in touch with your construction people and go over details before this happened and let us know that there was the potential for these overruns? You just gave $190,000, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, for a roof. That roof shouldn't have created a problem if you had a project manager on the site looking at the plans. I worked as an administrative assistant in the engineering department of Shering Plow, and we built buildings, and we used Torcon, and we never had the problems that this town is having. And don't anyone tell me you can't compare apples and oranges, because you certainly can when it talks about building buildings here. This is an absolute, in my honest opinion, a disgrace. The other disgrace is the Toth Health Center. That's been shut. The fencing is still across the parking lot, and that's from November of last year. The other thing that aggravates me, the Senior Citizen Center on Woodbridge Avenue was shut for months because it was in violation. You finally got it out of violations, and it wasn't open very long, and it was shut again. They are now going to Minnie Beeville Recreation Center, not community center, not senior center. Those are my three major things. And I also am going to say something, and the business administrator will not like it, because the comment was made that they didn't feel that they needed a project manager. The administration and the business administrator could handle it. Haven't handled it from day one. Those are my angers, because it keeps costing more money for stupid reasons. I also want to know, why do we now have to have purchase orders out there for vehicles from 2025? What's wrong with leftover 2024? Look for them. They're cheaper. They give you probably the same thing that you're going to need for 2025, but you never look at that. You always look at going forward. My next issue is I do not live on Amboy Avenue. I go through Amboy Avenue from time to time, and I have great respect for the people who have been coming here and to the planning board and telling you they don't want 4-story buildings, and the planning board totally ignored them and has left the 4-story building in the master plan. That's a disgrace, and unfortunately, the people have no recourse to it because they can't elect those people. So they're stuck with them. Those are my comments.
Any council members would like to take any comments? All right. You come up.
Good evening. Tom O'Shea, 165 Echo Avenue.
Recognize?
Want to comment on the proposed ordinance on Amboy Avenue. First, I would want to say I would encourage you to support the ordinance and vote to approve it because it is a large step in the right direction for the area. But I have three questions for clarifying purposes. In the master plan, it contemplated allowing 4-story buildings in the larger properties, which were defined as roughly larger than a half an acre. Does the ordinance as it's written eliminate that carve out so that it covers the entire redevelopment zone with the height limitations as proposed? The second question is on the 3.5 stories. Is it defined anywhere in the code or an ordinance what a half story is to be very clear that it is not habitable space or living space, that it's just utility space or stairways and things like that? And finally, is there a reason that the building type 4, which is only offices, it's not residential, allows only for 3 floors, but it allows for up to 40 feet? Is there a reason that that is not, that might be a Hank type question for how it's for the building design, but I would think that even at, normally an office building has higher ceilings, so there might be a little need for more space, but even with that, the design still could allow for the 35 feet with that up to that 10%, 38. It prevents the building from going to 44, 43, 44 feet. It brings it down a little bit more and still gives them the room I would think they need to build that building. So those are my 3 questions. And the 2 comments I would encourage as we look at the master plan and the redevelopment plan, that it not be an overlay, the redevelopment not be an optional approach for a builder, that the redevelopment plan replace the code that is presently in that area. And I'd also encourage the council to look to establish a redevelopment agency to serve Edison so that any of the areas that have been found to be in need of redevelopment can be driven and managed by a body that is focused strictly on that type of property.
Thank you, Tom. I think we can answer these questions. Legal counsel, can you explain if the 4 stories, the master plan eliminates the carve out?
So, before you start, I think, the dialogue between 2 of you is not helpful. If you can answer the resident straight, speaking in mic, looking at him, would be helpful.
Yeah, I was just looking off that way while I was thinking. So, my understanding is that the master plan leaves a carve out, right? The ordinance that's on for tonight doesn't actually permit that carve out that the master plan would otherwise have permitted. It makes a very clear distinction in the redevelopment plan, limiting the height of the buildings and limiting the number of stories without exception, okay? So what the master plan does is says, we should do these 3 stories, but allow 4 stories here, here, and here. The redevelopment plan is going to be what controls. And by amending the redevelopment plan and changing the language of the redevelopment plan to restrict it to 3 stories, that is ignoring the recommendations of the master plan. Because again, I think we said this before, that is what the master plan is. It is a series of recommendations and suggestions. Now, you have to work around them, right? You have to take them into account, and if you're going to make a deviation from them, it has to be justified, but they're not, again, set in stone as to what has to happen. It's a bad idea to ignore your master plan in total, but there are times, such as this, where doing what is necessary for the residents and doing what the council needs to do, you can ignore parts of the master plan so long as you have valid reasons.
Can you also answer the half story? Is it defined?
What I was just looking for was my copy of the redevelopment plan, because I wanted to see if it was in there, and I don't know that it is in the actual redevelopment plan itself. It's 170 pages, so. But I do believe that it is in the building code at some point. And that is what our ordinances are based off of. They adopt the construction codes and are enforceable through there. So at the end of the day, though, a half story is not a habitable story under any definition of the term.
Okay.
And Hank, would you be able to answer at the podium the type 4 offices as to why you don't know?
And Hank and I were talking about this just before, trying to remember what exactly the redevelopment plan says about those type 4 buildings, and it's part of the reason why I was looking for it, so I could have the exact language.
I don't know this evening. I can find out for you. I didn't write that plan. It was done by Susan Gruhl way back when. And as far as the half story, by definition, I believe it's a space that is only 5 feet, so it's not a habitable space. It could be for storage or utility equipment, things like that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so it's not a half story that's half the size, it's half the height.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Karen Halo, 55 First Street.
You recognized?
Okay, so looking over, I'm here for the Clara Barton issue because I'm a Clara Barton resident. I think you've seen us all a bunch of times, and we're coming out and we're cutting into our family time and our personal time. We're not politicians. We elect politicians. Hopefully they'll understand where we're coming from. And I think that we've all kind of really spoken as clearly as we can that we're not into the 4 stories. Having said that, I do support the ordinance for the 3 stories. I mean, things change. You can't have things stay back in time. I get that. But ironically, to me, the most interesting thing was one of the first lines of the master plan was just this little bullet, and it said it encourages the preservation of distinct and cohesive neighborhoods. Now, Clara Barton is a distinct and cohesive neighborhood. It's a little pocket. It's like a World War II boomer, Cape Cod houses. And so I don't really see 4-story buildings maintaining a distinct and cohesive neighborhood. So, and that's in the master plan. That's one of the first 5 or 6 bullets that go down, and it's pretty simple when you read it. And everything else that I read after that says, wow, how does that fit underneath that bullet, and how does that make sense? So that's what I have to say about it. A lot of people are a lot more technical and legal and a little more versed than I am in this, but I really encourage you think about the integrity of the neighborhood and the nice little pocket that we have. So anyway, thank you again.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else that would like to speak?
Mark Bowles, Lafayette Avenue.
You're recognized,
I'm
Mark.
with the Clara Barton people, and I'm coming late to this process, but could I recommend, or has there been a presentation by the planning board about the master plan, or a focus for the master plan, or a direction that we could all hear Do they ever make reports to the councilman for the public to hear as well?
If you have any more questions, I'll take all the questions and then I'll get to it.
Because there seems to be an embarrassing lack of information about this topic. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Pointer, would you
Thank
like to
you,
answer that?
Council President. In regards to the master plan itself, there were a series of meetings. There was a subcommittee that was formed, several meetings amongst the public for feedback. The planning board did have several meetings over the past 2 years in regards to discussing the master plan, what was going to be placed into it. I don't have those exact dates in front of me, but they are on record and video. In regards to the Amboy Avenue, specific to the redevelopment plan, that was brought forth to the planning board in April. It was discussed at the last meeting. That was not as elaborated on, so to say, as compared to the master plan, but part of that is because a lot of those discussion items are involved in the master plan. There's a lot of overlap between the two, so that may be the reason as to why, but hopefully that explains the lead up as to how we got to here. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak?
Kemi Omani, 79 6th Street, Edison here in New Jersey. Thank you. I'm quite sure a lot of people have spoken from the community, and I support what they have told you, that the height should be 3, and the councilwoman has been to that place, and she has seen whatever is going on up there. I think whatever decision that should be taken, they should everybody taking decision concerning Clara Barton should consider the life of those people that live there. Because after the whole mess is constructed and put together, either by the councilman that's supposed to represent us and all those people on the planning board, everybody goes home except him. But I think he has a way of going into his own property. But we live right in the middle of whatever mess is going on. So whatever decision that will make us not to come here, whatever decision that will make us not to be here every meeting and give us opportunity to be thinking that we regret ever voting some people in, tonight should be the night that that decision should be taken. We're tired of leaving family to come and sit here to push people to do whatever they're supposed to do. We're tired of people not representing or talking about the plight of Clara Barton when they get to these seats, and they're just concerned about their own selfish and greed. We're tired of it. Whatever decision, I know there are a lot of good people on the seat. Tonight should be the decision. We're tired of coming continuously. I'm quite sure if there's anything on the table of Councilman Patel or Brecher or Margot, it will be about us, just to make us comfortable. I know Carl can never have anything. I don't know about John. The president, kindly do the needful. We are tired.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to close the public portion?
Motion to close?
Second.
All right, motion by Council Vice President, second by Councilman Coyle. All in favor?
Aye.
The public portion is closed. Moving on to number 5, review of minutes. Any comments from the council members? Seeing none. Moving on to number 6, reports from all council committees. Starting on my right, Councilman Coyle.
None, sir.
All right. Council Vice President.
I have several. The monthly animal shelter report is more good news. with the current heat, they've been staying mostly indoors with the animals. They're going to go into a few nursing homes for the residents to see the puppies and kittens, but they will not do any big events until the weather breaks. The current census, felines, the cats, there are 9 cats, 25 kittens, 1 nursing mom, and 1 pregnant. Canine, 14 dogs, 5 puppies, 1 nursing mom. And the small furriers or feathers is a bird. I believe that bird was found somewhere in North Edison. It was a red-tailed hawk, and it was, I think, a broken wing, and it was brought to the Raptor Trust over in Millington to either rehabilitate or to live there. Adoptions, this is an incredible number. 50 cats were adopted in the month of June. 4 canines. Redemptions, there were 11 canines, 2 felines, and animal control calls, 137. So they're continuing to really rocket there. The Human Relations Commission, that was held on 7/2. I was not present, but I did get the minutes, thank you, from Maria Orchid. And so since Maria Wise has departed, new election was held, and so the new chair is Maria Orchid. Congratulations to you. New secretary is Mansi Mathur, and the new treasurer is Rashid Khan. The goals and objectives will be forming subcommittees such as a fundraiser, creating list of events to attend, explore potential collaborations with other commissions and groups. Motivational speakers are and open to the public, bike safety. They decided not to meet in the council chambers next month, but we'll have a table and National Night Out on August 6th. Looking forward to this great event and meeting everyone on the field. The mayor's quarterly meeting, we need to review the goals for the next meeting. 1 milestone has to be accomplished each quarter. Need a member appointed from Edison Schools, and they decided to keep the meetings to be held within 1 hour. The next meeting will be at the National Night Out on August 6th. Library Board, that was held on July 9th. And the 2023 audit is still in progress. It should be available and done at the end of July. The Bookmobile Sprinter van is repaired and it's up and running again. The Library Foundation, they are developing brochures for the capital campaign. North Edison branch is moving quickly to the planning board. Main library branch furniture designs are being submitted. Clara Barton branch, they have a full program schedule for this month. The Bookmobile is in motion and around town. They're going to increase their presence at festivals and farmers markets. The ILS migration integrated library system is very slow right now in its progress. New business, the resolution to designate the Township of Edison Public Library as a sanctuary library was approved. It's the freedom to read, including endangered and would-be banned books. Finally, I had brought up the concern that had been raised by some residents about asbestos being removed from the main library. And so as it turns out, what happened was that this was on the 2nd floor. And it was noted when a few 9x9 tiles had been removed. This is the 9x9 tiles go back to 1963. So they are in the process of remediation. That floor has been closed off, so nobody is in any kind of danger. They're doing air quality tests. There is no danger to the public. The next meeting will be Tuesday, August 13th at 7 p.m. Finally, there was no Cultural Arts Commission meeting this month. That will also be on August 13th of next month. But just a few things to note. The Ferrante House, Ray Porio had been kind enough to give me a tour of the progress on the Ferrante House, and it's coming along really, really nicely. It's transforming. And it's really beginning to look like something that's going to be usable in the not too distant future. I also wanted to report that I had a conversation, this is following up on what I spoke about at the last meeting, about the idea for the Greenway which is insufficient for benches, for seating areas for people who want to take a break. And I had talked about the possibility of benches that at least for the Edison corridor, that businesses or private people could sponsor. They would purchase a bench and have their names put on there, and that we could have a local artist do some painting of the benches. And so I spoke to Commissioner Santinera, and she really liked the idea. She liked the idea for being able to extend that to the other towns that are involved and that will be involved when the Greenway is extended. And so she was going to speak to Commissioner Charlie tomorrow, our own Charlie tomorrow, and have him get in touch with me. So I'm waiting to have a deeper conversation, but I'm hoping this is something that we can realize. It would be, it's a win-win-win. We would have seating for people's comfort. We could do some fundraising for the Cultural Arts Commission and have local artists be involved in painting them. So I'm really happy that this might be moving along. That concludes my reports. Thank you, Council
Thank you,
President.
Council Vice President. Councilman Patel?
None at this time.
Councilman Pointer?
None at this time.
Councilman Schmuel?
At this time.
All right, none for me as well. Moving on to points of light. Any council member with points of light?
Yes, Council President.
Council Vice President?
Yes. Tuesday, July 9th, was a very dark day for this town. We lost a valued and beloved police lieutenant, and that was Don Shipp, Lieutenant Don Shipp, also known as Tiger, who was so well liked in this community. He had been in the community policing, and he was such a huge presence in this town, and we were shocked and so saddened by this untimely passing. We also lost on that same day the firefighter Howard Tarlow, again way too soon, and another well-liked individual. And just the fact that these two events happened on that day, and then it was sandwiched with someone who lived a long and well-lived life, and that was Red Ellis, the World War II veteran, passed away at the age, I believe, of 98, but he was a hero and so well-liked by the residents here. We were proud to have him among us. So I think Edison has sent into heaven 3 really great angels, and so condolences to the families and friends, and in the case of firefighter Tarlow, and in the case of Lieutenant Shipp, condolences also to the brethren who served with him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Vice.
I'm sorry, one more thing. I also wanted to, on a positive side, with the storms that we had over the last couple of weeks, a lot of damage done to Edison and Metuchen, a lot of trees down, some that fell on houses, a lot of limb damage. And I was just amazed by the response, the rapid response of DPW in getting those cleared up. I couldn't believe how quickly that was. And also public safety for getting out there and being on the scene. So thank you all. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Any other council members? All right, seeing none. Councilman Pointer?
Thank you, Council President. Just because it's been that long since our last meeting, we had the July 4th celebration since then. It was very well attended, despite the rain that occurred. I was happy to see everyone come out. Thank you to Department of Rec, DPW, police, fire, everyone that we know that plays a vital role in getting these events set up and executing. So thank you for that. I had a great time with my family there, and I hope everyone enjoyed. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Pointer. I too enjoyed the July 4th fireworks. They were amazing. They were very memorable. So thank you to all the teams that made it happen. And I do agree with what Council Vice President said. We lost good people, and Edison is sadder for it. But I do want to make some announcements. Edison House Music Festival is going to take place on Saturday, August 24th, from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Papiani Park. And moving on, number 8 from the Business Administration, A through F. Any questions or comments?
Council President.
Councilman Pointer.
Yes, I have a couple. This is going to be in regards to the Clara Barton ordinance. First, do we have the ability to do this by ordinance, or do we have to submit a resolution to the planning board for them to, with a red line document for them to approve?
Which one are you talking about? Sorry.
Sorry, in regards to item E, in regards to the ordinance amending the redevelopment plan for Amboy Avenue.
So the way that we're doing it right now is by ordinance. That's how we're required to make the amendment to the redevelopment plan under the local redevelopment law. What that does is it goes to the planning board for their review and then the recommendations when they come back to us. And then it can be adopted accordingly. Once that is done, we can then redline or have them redraft or whatever we need to do for the actual redevelopment plan itself so that it is consistent, taken care of. Depending on what the planning board recommends or what they send back to us, there might be additional changes that we want to make based on their recommendations. There might not be. But at this point, this is the document that is going to the planning board.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I guess I'm a little disappointed, if I'm going to be straightforward about this, because the master plan specifically calls out that parking is an issue. The master plan calls out that design standards should be established for Amboy Avenue. And this ordinance, if we're going to be redoing the redevelopment plan, we should be taking all these things into consideration and doing it at once. This does not do that. And let me be clear, like, I don't agree with the 4 stories. People know that. Let me be honest. I don't agree with the 3 stories because in my experience now on council and on the planning board, that half story to me does not have a detrimental impact to the quality of life of the residents of the neighborhood. And let me just say for the record, I live in the neighborhood. This will impact my life, my children's life, and everyone else after that, as well as my neighbors and friends in the surrounding neighborhood. With that said, it's tough for me to be enthusiastic where if we say that there's parking issues on Amboy Avenue, then how do we not allow for properties to have parking allowed on their side yard setbacks? You would think that allowing that as an option would provide additional parking, which the neighborhood needs. Now, I understand the overall objective maybe initially was that by doing the zero feet side setbacks, you would go block to block, and therefore creating a more downtown-like feel. However, Amboy Avenue has block to block of 200 feet. That is not consistent with Red Bank, with Metuchen, with Jersey City, Hoboken, where all those streets are 300, 400, 500 feet in width. So if parking is an issue, then why are we not allowing that as an opportunity for anyone who may want to develop on Amboy to be able to satisfy that parking? In regards to the design standards, I made a comment after the resolution to send it to the planning board that several design standards should be incorporated. The awnings, the rooftop, the stylistic type of the brick, none of that has been taken into consideration here, which the master plan does ask for. It does say that we should consider these in total when reviewing this plan. So I guess I'm just disappointed in that fact. Are we able to amend this ordinance with any of those items of consideration? Because I held off. I listened to my colleagues say, hey, wait a minute, don't hold on the resolution, sending it to the planning board. Let's send it to the planning board, see what it says, come back here. I made all these recommendations. I don't know when else at this point then that I can make the recommendations with it possibly being implemented. So is that something that we would
So,
consider as a
the
body?
Councilman Pointer's asking, can we make amendments to this ordinance?
So like any other ordinance, minor amendments are permissible. Those recommendations may come back from the planning board to incorporate some of those changes after their review, and then we would have to incorporate them there. The main goal, I believe here, and Sonia can correct me if I'm wrong, is to address the very immediate issue of the 3 or 4 stories. This doesn't mean that, I saw you start, that's correct, right? Yeah.
That's correct.
That doesn't mean that there can never be any additional changes to the redevelopment plan. That doesn't mean that we can't incorporate new design standards, parking issues, things like that. The problem with that right now is that based on how the planning board, I guess, reviewed it and what they sent back to us, not all of those can be done effectively right now. And it would take additional time, it would take additional opportunity away from the residents currently. So this addresses the immediate issue of the residents with respect to the 3 stories versus 4 stories issue, but still leaves the door open that we can do additional things with the redevelopment plan in the future. We might need to adjust it further down the line. We might need to adjust it from this if it turns out that it creates a conflict within the redevelopment plan itself that needs to be addressed by this council. I don't believe it does. We went over it. I know that there have been a number of meetings. I know that this is a refinement on trying to get it to a point where we can, at the very least, say, you're not going to have any applications come in and say, I want to put 4 stories in. But if there are additional things that need to change about it, that is something that we can take on going forward without having that time pressure of worrying that someone's going to come in and say, I want to put a 4-story building right next to your house. I know it's not ideal, but I do caution you, don't let, perfect become the enemy of the good, right? It's incremental. It is a step in the right direction. It may not make everyone happy, but it is not a fixed development that can never be addressed again by this council. Don't think that.
Yes, so my issue isn't necessarily, I'm not viewing this from a height and a story argument. I'm viewing this from a density argument. So you can say, hey, 3 stories is permissible and all that's fine, but when you have a minimized rear yard setback, that means the actual square footage of the building that could go up is actually larger, which means that you can fit more units inside, which means a higher density. So when I'm viewing this, I know the immediate desire of many of my neighbors, but I think the underlying desire of the neighborhood actually has to deal with the density of any proposed development, and I don't think this tackles it fully. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Pointer. Councilman Patel?
Yeah. Thank you, Council President. And I have many issues with this ordinance, but if the residents choose to go this route, I will support them because that's their will. The best thing could have been probably just repeal the current ordinance. That was the ask. Didn't happen. So we went with a different route. I have not seen the supporting document from the planning board, any report that talks about the density, that talks about the safety, traffic, school impact, how many students are going to come. The water and sewer infrastructure, is it capable of handling if we put all the 3.5 stories building all along Amboy Avenue? I have not seen any metrics. So we are just shooting in a blind at this point in time. And I don't think any council member has that data with them. Having said that, I agree with my council colleague. There were few things that were asked, but the way this redevelopment, the ordinance is written, I don't think it is foolproof, because this is going to leave a lot, I would say, open areas that will promote the redevelopment, I would say, applications for the 4 stories. I don't know what is the advantage of half a story. Is it some sort of, giving the additional, again, if you look at it, the developer is smart. He construct 3.5 story will be a 4 story, believe me or not. They will sneak in. Hank, you said that it is a 10%. Guess what? Mixed use, it will be 4 story with 35 feet. They will end up going that. And you will end up giving the 10% variance on that. And believe me, we have seen enough in this town how the developers take the advantage of the situation. They will sneak in. They will give the reference of another property. And if our master plan is not in sync with ordinance, guess what? It will go in a court. It will get denied. Our application, even if the application is denied by the planning board, it will be appealed in the court, and they will say, hey, your master plan guideline is this, your ordinance is this, what's going to happen? It's going to be overturned. And here you go back. Yeah, we have a law, but we are just doing our master plan, which is not in sync. Why is it so? Why can't you make, if it is 3.5 story, and if the residents want that, I would prefer to have that plan in the master plan, not to have any deviation from the master plan. We should not leave any stone unturned to make sure this is foolproof and there is no waiver around anything that the redeveloper wants to do. Again, as I said, I have an objection, but I will leave it to the residents, and I will look to my council. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Patel.
Council President,
Councilman Coyle.
I just want to echo some comments that Councilman Porter made. First, I just received this today at 5 o'clock, so I didn't get a chance to read it. Most people probably in this room may think I was a part of the architect, I read it. I mean, there's always 10 stories that, well, if you watch Facebook, I guess you believe everything. But I know most people in this room know what we say is true. This is a first reading. I didn't even look at it at all. I got it at 5 o'clock. But I will agree with my council colleague in the changes that need to be looked at, but as well as a comprehensive discussion with the business community. And I have yet to see us engage the business community. I think the mayor took his first step in engaging the business community, which is great, but I have not heard from anybody. The challenges I have is when I hear from a few people in this room, they don't matter. It's a problem. We have to weigh the business community who make the investment to keep a store open, to be there, to work night and day. I mean, having specialty stores is the fabric of our downtown. You don't want to turn into a service community. But that being said, we won't go there. I support affordable housing. And as we look at taking this apart, we block bust affordable housing, and I am going to be strong on it. Those who have this opportunity to move into a community, with moderate or low income should be able to. It's not a lot. I mean, people start to believe it's so much going to come our way. If someone builds 20 units, it's 4 apartments that go to a family. And we forget all the great stories that come with affordable housing. There's a lot of great stories. We, think sometimes the wrong direction, some of us, not all of us, that affordable housing is bad for a neighborhood. Not true. But as we look at reducing this, we've taken no input from the business community, which is a problem. Again, what Councilman Porn discussed with the parking, we haven't sat down and talked about parking. That's a unified discussion I'm open to have. And said, we point fingers of what's for or against. I'm fine with sitting down with anybody. I've mentioned before, reach out to the clerk. You want to meet anywhere in the downtown, tell me where the traffic is. Tell me that the building across from Subway is destroying the neighborhood. I'll have that debate. I'm open to that debate. How this $9 million building is destroying your neighborhood. Whereas we just have to look at some fair things in balance. There's some blight on the block, and we have to look at that. People are selling cars on the block, fixing cars on the block. There's overcrowding issues with multiple family residents in one home and multiple tenants. Not a family, but they're renting the basement, renting the upstairs. These things we have to address. So I just want to go over what's truly impacting us as a group together. And let's talk about a factual discussion. That's all I'm asking for. I may not win every argument with you. I'm fine with losing a few. but let's at least have the discussion. I had zero discussion, and I do want to thank the mayor. He met with this group 6 times. I think this ordinance has gotten more play than other life-saving measures we have in our crime, of public safety and fire. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion on this one matter. So, I mean, I think it's fair. Opioids, we don't talk about opioids, but we're talking about this, and the mayor's given a lot of attention to it. I'm just asking for a comprehensive discussion. Anyone can call me. I'll sit anywhere on the block at your time, just to openly have that, and any colleague that wants to take a walk, just to measure this in a proper way. But first, let's talk about the parking. Where's the parking? Still, since 1994. And in this overlay zone, it says it would provide parking. We have not discovered that yet. So again, I know we may disagree on some things, but let's not argue that some of us on this council do a lot on the block. You know, there are people selling cars, there are multiple tenants in homes we've gotten rid of, truck parking. These things impact your neighborhood. When someone moves in and parks a tractor trailer in front of your house, that's a problem. So I just hope we collectively understand some of the measures we've accomplished on this council and some stuff we may disagree with, or you may disagree with me. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Coyle. Any other comments?
Yes, please. What are our options going forward on this? I didn't feel comfortable getting this at 5 o'clock. It just leaves no time to really look this over and give it the attention it needs. And so what are our options with this particular ordinance as it stands right now?
You want to take it? I mean, I think it's just like with any ordinance, we can either table it or to delay it. I mean, we do have till Wednesday to review the material, and if you don't feel that you're ready, we can discuss other options. But at this point, we don't have to make the decision today. We do have time to review.
And if you also have to remember, once it's introduced on first reading, it does go to the planning board. You do have to wait to get it back from the planning board, or for that 45 days to elapse, whichever comes first, before it can then be done at a second reading. So there will be a significant period of time for either become familiar with it, ask any questions that you might have, make any recommendations for any potential amendments, review the planning board information that they get back to you, for as to whether or not there's any recommendations for changes, amendments, or additions to it. And remember, if the planning board does send it back with amendments and those amendments are incorporated, it doesn't have to go back to them for another review. It can then simply be amended and taken care of. So there are options beyond today. Today's the work session meeting. I know it was introduced a little bit late on to the agenda, but you still have time to review everything and ask everything that you need to ask and get familiar with what needs to happen.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else?
Council President, I just want to
Councilman
share,
Clark?
if there's an opportunity to, I've heard from the residents, I'm happy to hear that they don't like the ordinance, not to mean that nobody likes the ordinance, but I'm just open to request your support to pull this from the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Call. Anybody else that would like to speak on this? Any other questions from? Please, no talking from anyone who's recognized can talk. Otherwise, no talking. Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak on A through F?
Council President?
Councilman Patel?
Go ahead. On F, the cost of living adjustment of certain employees of the township. Is there a reason that we don't have building and construction department head included?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Building and construction department head. He's also at the director, close to director position. And happy to see the other employees there, DPW definitely deserves. But from the building construction, that's what I'm talking about. I think once upon a time, we had that in the original ordinance, but then it was removed for some reason.
It's still in the original ordinance. My understanding, this just amends what the current ordinance lists, and the attorney can answer that. So that hasn't changed.
Yeah, my understanding is that there's 3 on this one, right? There's 3 additions to that did not already receive the cost of living adjustment or the additional adjustment. The one that you're asking about was included already in the ordinance that was that January? And it was earlier this year, maybe February.
No, my recollection is we pulled that out. There was a discussion on that.
You're correct in saying that it was pulled out, but it was included in the original ordinance from 2022. So I can pull that up for you and provide that to you.
Yes, but I don't think we reacted or acted on that particular designation, except 3, I would say 4 were excluded from 2023 January ordinance. And then I see the 3 from those 4 excluded. Don't know the building construction head is in that salary range. But if you can help me.
I'll give you the history of the original and where it is, and this just amends that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Council President, for the call out, when we say certain, can we, on a separate email, can I know who, certain employees, who are the certain employees?
It should be on the backup document.
You have that.
Okay, I just, with the meltdown we had on Friday, I
Yeah,
just
I
got
know.
most of my stuff today. But okay,
Madam
I don't need
Clerk.
to discuss it now, but I'll have a separate conversation.
Sounds good. Anybody else?
Council President,
Councilman Shmuel?
I have a question on AD for the BA. Sonia, AD, so it's my understanding that we're terminating the current architect of record for this project, and we're hiring someone else to manage the project?
That is, I don't necessarily want to provide an answer that we may have issues with regards to litigation or potential litigation. Our intent is to engage with a new firm for the architectural services, but at the same time engage in construction management due to the issues that have arisen out of the change order, roofing change order.
Okay, so do we owe them any money on their contract?
We,
Yep, Council.
So because of the issues that arose out of the original, this is probably a discussion that is better held offline rather than out in a public forum. It has to do with contract issues, and it has to do with potential litigation issues.
Okay, we'll talk offline then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman
I have
Plato?
a question on D. So this is for the sport building, $378,000. Finally, we are getting the construction manager. My council colleague was pitching hard to get that, and finally it's happening. What is the cost impact? Because we had the first change order, and I think we have another change order, and this is $378,000. So is this going to cost us additional $500,000 in net from the original? Original was 4 or 5 million. It's now 11. Is this going to be 11.5?
So this obviously this is an increase in the cost of the project. However, we're hoping that with the construction management oversight, that it'll be a lot more efficient in terms of the cost and any other potential issues that may arise. Having someone on site to see exactly between the contractor, subcontractors, that everything is exactly the way it is supposed to be, including all of the architectural design work, so that there is a much higher level oversight and hands-on approach to this project, given the pricing, as you mentioned.
Understood, but we are halfway in the project, right? Or maybe 70, 80% done of the project, correct?
I'd have to just confirm on the percentage of the project, exactly how much has been done. It may be 50% or so.
Is there a reason that we are not doing the same thing for Toth Center? Because we learned from the mistakes, right? Now we are bringing the construction manager. But Toth Center is still being handled in-house. Is there a reason that we are not following the same protocol across the large projects?
So the scope of the work for the Toth Center is much different. in terms of there's no necessarily a complete tear down of a building and reconstruction of a new building. However, the issues are much different between the two. So at this point in time, we don't feel that there's a construction management oversight necessary at the Toth building. Again, we've learned from our mistakes in that we're now coming to the council that a construction manager is necessary. And if in the event that happens with the tow center, we'd certainly want to approach the council and let you all know that that would be a necessary move.
It sounds good. And from where this fund will come now? Because this is $400,000 additional than what we budgeted for. Is it coming from the capital, or it is going to come from operating? From where?
So this will come out of capital. And so with this council having adopted a new bond ordinance, we certainly feel that there's a cost to cover this.
But that means you'll have to move the funds now between the accounts, between the projects.
But again, I don't want to necessarily get into the potential litigation portion of it. We're hoping to recover some of these costs.
Okay. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Patel. As for me, on E, I agree with Councilman Pointer. I think this ordinance does not necessarily go as far as I would hope. The stories is definitely being addressed, but I think the underlying issue that the residents feel is the density portion of it with the traffic and parking and all that issues that come with greater density of a development. So I think we do need to address the design and the parking. I'm not sure how quickly we can do this. I don't want to stop this train if we don't have to, because I think this is the right approach to protect the Clara Barton section as fast as possible. And then we do need to target the parking and design. We do need to have a cohesive vision of Clara Barton in the long run as to how we want to build it out. In terms of the project management, I do hope that the administration considers having a separate project management department. Go ahead, Sonia.
Just to clarify, on the Toth Center, CME does have a portion of that as a construction management oversight. So from a technical standpoint on their proposal. So I just wanted to add to that.
Okay.
I re-looked at their proposal and it is in there.
Thank you, Sonia. But I think the point still stands. I think having a manager that's specifically targeting all the projects, we're doing a lot of projects around the town, and having someone that's specifically just making sure everything's on track. If there's any issues, I think it would be good to have. Moving on to number 9 from the Department of Finance, A through J. Any questions or comments?
Council President?
Councilman Pointer?
See if I can find it, but wanted to call out particularly the item H in regards to the items of revenue and appropriations. I know a couple of the items included like clean communities, receiving the grant for that. To a comment that Councilman Coyle made before in regards to opioids, one of the items is from a settlement. I forget the name of the carrier, but I'm hoping that you can discuss with the administration what some of those funds are used for, because it's a good amount. Again, I apologize, I don't have all of them in front of me, but there were a lot of good items in there, and several million, actually. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to make a comment on A through J? All right, as for me, I am glad to see F, which is the resolution authorizing extending grace period for taxes in the third quarter. I think we were delayed heavily to give the tax to the residents, and I think they do deserve a grace period, as it's only about 2 weeks before the taxes were due. And as I also agree with Councilman Pointer, the resolution, especially there are some pedestrian-related that I'm really happy to see that we're applying for. Yes, Sonia?
Would you like me to go over the list of items that are in the Chapter 159 revenue?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Sure. So there's a Clean Communities grant that's for $235,427. There's also the opioid settlements, that's about 1.7 million.
A question on the opioid settlement. Are they specifically you have to use it in a specific ways or specific things?
There are, and we've discussed that with a couple of council members, and open to any discussion as well, if anyone wants to reach out to Ken or I.
Okay.
And we can discuss exactly what. We've started to do some programming with police and health department. So some positions may be covered under the opioid funds. So regarding public health awareness. So that is one thing that we've looked into. There is also $5,000 for Home Safety Initiative Grant, a Edison Station Pedestrian Improvement Project for $675,000.
Can you talk a little bit about that one as to what that encompasses?
Sure. So it's my understanding over at the Edison train station. So any traffic beacon signs, several items I can cover there. There's a King George's Post Road rehab for $332,970. A amendment to the Department of Health grant for $1,500. I'd have to get more in detail with that. Kilmer Road Phase 3, roadway improvements for Kilmer Road Phase 3 project for $530,990. Public health strengthening local public health capacity grant, $74,664. And that's what we have in total for now. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Sonia. And I'm also just want to make a quick comment on I and J. I am happy that that's the cleanup of the books to hopefully we can have more focus on the grants that we are applied to. All right, moving on to number 10, A through Q. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none. Moving on to number.
Council President. A question in regards to M, and I apologize that I didn't send this with my other list. This plotter, is it anticipated, I know it's for code enforcement, but would there be anticipation of other departments utilizing this? You do share? And do you know if this has capability of scanning the 24 by 36 That's fantastic, by the way. So I'm hoping that the support is for this. Yeah, and just in regards to digitizing our records, because they come in an architectural D, that's your 24 by 36 size, having this capability and resource, I think will be very beneficial. Thank you, Council Vice President.
Councilman Patil?
Thank you. Sonia, question on B. The grant application for Marywood Drive and Brunswick Avenue intersection. There are two, I would say one entry exit, but there are two on New Brunswick Avenue. So which one we are talking? So there is Hannah Road, there is Marywood Drive, and again there is Marywood Drive. It makes the U-turn there.
I'm going to have Brian explain to you.
Sure.
Councilman, this is going to be the intersection closest to the bus stop.
Close to the bus stop, okay. That's where the pedestrian crosswalk is.
Correct. Right now, the pedestrian crosswalk, for whatever reason, is not perpendicular to the road, so it's longer than it really should be.
Right.
So we're looking to redo the crosswalk orientations, stripe everything, make all crossings a lot more visible, including a pedestrian beacon and new ADA ramps. This way, it's a safer crossing to get to and from the bus stop.
And hopefully, we're talking about the commercial grade equipment there, right, for the crosswalk.
It's going to be thermoplastic as proposed, which has the best longevity of striping.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Still on 10.
Okay.
Council President,
Councilman Coyle.
I just wanted to look at I and J. If I can have a separate discussion later with the engineer and that position. I received a few complaints and I met with some residents about the CarMax. I just want to make sure that everything, before we give them back their bond that everything's completed.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilman Clara, I didn't, what are we confirming?
I want to speak to the administration about I and J before I vote on it on Wednesday.
Okay.
Sure, okay.
All right, sounds good. All right, any other questions or comments on 10? All right, moving on to number 11, from the Departments of Public Works, A through Z. Any questions or comments?
Council President.
Councilman Patil?
On F, cricket pitches at Woodrow Wilson. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. In fact, I was expecting some more discussion before this comes on the agenda. At this point in time, when I spoke to Ray, I spoke to Chief of Staff Bob Deal today. This is something we need to have the discussion during the Board of Ed and Council liaison meeting, so that we are not disturbing any any matches that are happening, cricket matches that are happening on Woodrow Wilson. Also, we need to understand the expansion plan of Woodrow Wilson. That's not going to, again, if we are making the investment, that will not impact that expansion. I think, this really needs study, whether we are spending the money in the right direction at this point in time. Maybe until we understand the plan from the Board of Ed. So I don't know, why there is a disconnect. We only have handful people involved, Board of Ed and the Council liaison meeting. That's one. And the second one is, if there had any communication with the cricket fraternity, that would have been helpful. But I think this is not really a good direction. I hope this council will pull this off the agenda on Wednesday.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Patil. Any other questions or comments? Okay, for me, I also had a question on F. Who owns this turf field, Sonia, when we build it out?
So this is part of the shared services agreement with the school.
Okay,
So this is on school property.
okay. But who will be maintaining it? Would we be responsible or the school be responsible?
So the township, according to the agreement, is responsible for the maintenance, the rolling and the maintenance.
Council President, if you want me to shed the light on this, because I'm very closely aligned, and I was part of the meeting where the mayor spoke about the combining the township fields as well as the Board of Fields. The shared service agreement is to maintain, not to do much beyond the maintenance. What the maintenance, again, everyone can understand a different way. The understanding was, if there is a need of soil, that will be added, and the pitch will be rolled and the grass will be cut on a regular basis. That was the ask, because all these cricket teams, they use their own mat. They have their mat. They always play, regardless whether you put any type of cricket pitch there, they are going to use the mat. And that's what I was asking, let's pause this. Again, this is a good thing to happen, by the way, for cricket. But this is too early to call because we are in a peak season of the cricket. Second thing is, when the shared service agreement talks about maintaining the fields. Again, you can probably say, hey, maintain means let me redo certain things. That is where I think the direction is slightly misaligned. And my understanding is that was not asked and that was not the expectation. Thank you, sir.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Council President?
Councilman Coyle.
On the turf field itself, is it a sports field for the students or is it a community field?
Sonia?
It is a sports field for the students. But just to echo Councilman Patil's comment, with regard to what is currently happening, what the administration just found out today, is that there are improvements. We just found out about those improvements. Certainly, we want to do the right thing by the shared services agreement. So it's up to this body whether they want to pause this or whatever it is that you choose to do. However, we're just following what the shared services agreement has us to do, and that is rolling and maintaining the pitches. So it's my understanding these were not safe to use. So in order for us to go ahead and do the scheduling and make good with our agreement, we wanted to make sure that they were done correctly, and therefore that's why we went through this into this body to get this resolution approved.
Okay, we can further this discussion offline. I do have more questions. Any other questions or comments?
Council President.
Councilman Shmuel.
10Q. So this is now a change order for $96,000 for the fields. Now,
No, we're on 11 now.
no. 10Q. Right?
No, sorry, we're on, do you want to go back to, I don't want to go backwards, so can we keep it on 11?
We're on 11?
Yeah, sorry.
I missed that.
Sorry.
Can we go back to 10?
Can you take it offline, is that okay?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Council President?
Councilman Pointer?
Thank you. 11L regarding the pickleball courts at Eulanxis Park. If we have drawings from the bid, if that can be sent to me, I'd appreciate it. I know I had asked in regards to additional information for item N for the various park and playground equipment. It may have been provided with all the Microsoft issues this weekend. It was a little funky getting the info, but if I can get some elaboration, can be offline or backup documentation, just elaborating where some of those items are expected to go. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Pointer. All right, any other questions from 11, A through Z? All right, seeing none, moving on to number 12, from the Department of Recreation, A through D. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, moving on to number 13, A. Any questions or comments? Moving on to number 14, from the Chief of Police, A through C. Any questions or comments? Number 15, from Township Clerk, A through E. Any questions or comments?
Council President?
Councilman Patel.
On D, is this a new license we are adding, or this is the one that we earlier went out for bid, no one?
It's a rebid. We didn't
Rebid,
receive any
okay.
bids.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, moving on to number 16, from the council member of the Planning Board.
Thank you, Council President. I'm going to do this a little off the cuff because normally I review the agenda, then do my planning board overview. It's quite a lengthy agenda, so I'm sure you can understand. But the planning board held its monthly meeting on Monday, July 15th, 7 p.m. here in council chambers with the following items acted on. First, in regards to resolutions, P5242, Mir, a 90-day extension for minor subdivision, that was approved. Resolution P08-2023, 779 New Durham Road, LLC, final site plan approval, also approved. And P02-2024, Blueberry Village Incorporated, preliminary and final site plan approval. Again, that resolution was approved. Under miscellaneous, we had Resolution R134, which was the council's request for the planning board's review in regards to Amboy Avenue, which we've discussed a lot tonight. Item number 2, the vote on the master plan as presented by BFJ Planning. This was approved. And finally, R346-062024, that was the 1810 Route 27 redevelopment plan that we had asked the planning board to review and comment on, found to be consistent with the master plan, and it is before us again. Under new business, case P5256, Kishan Patel, 98 Bernard Avenue. Applicant was seeking a minor subdivision approval. This property is in the RB zone, which is a minimum 7,500 square feet. They were seeking a bulk variance for lot width. They met the other criterias in regards to depth, lot area, and all the other bulk requirements. The board did approve the application unanimously with some conditions of the approval in regards to location of the AC units, proximity to where the buildings are in comparison to the neighbors, and a couple of other items. Outside of that, there were no additional items for discussion. I apologize, I don't have the next meeting in front of me, but it will be in August, actually, 7 PM here in council chambers, usually the third Monday of the month. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Pointer. Moving on to number 17, unfinished business. Ordinance for further consideration in public hearing and final adoption. Ordinance 2225-2024. An ordinance amending the 1000 Inman Avenue redevelopment plan in the township pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law. Any questions or comments? All right, ordinance 2226-2024, an ordinance adopting the 1810 Route 27 redevelopment plan, Route 27 and Schuler's Drive study area pursuant to local redevelopment and housing law. Any questions or comments? And ordinance 2227-2024, an ordinance amending the township code to add an address to the list of persons entitled to handicap parking space. Any questions or comments? All right, moving on to discussion items, starting with Councilman Coyle.
Thank you, Council President. Just want to skip through my agenda and just, I know other colleagues have mentioned, just the public safety, we lost a few great people this last week, and my condolences to the families, and truly sad. I just want to mention that. Thank you. Stormwater management, I have been working with some volunteers, and I just recently sent an email to Councilman Pointer. Some volunteers have visited different areas of the state. I also visited an area of the state which had an interesting stormwater management process of infrastructure, whereas a curb line had a slit in it, and it would basically absorb the curb line stormwater into the plant area. It also offered other opportunities to separate storm drain water as well. And I did some homework with some volunteers, and I passed it to Councilman John Porter to look at before we can ask the administration to look into any grant opportunities that may come forth with that. But with those grants come infrastructure improvements, and throughout the town this can happen. I know we looked at plans for Oak Tree Road and different opportunities. People here tonight complained about Amboy Avenue and the flooding. This is a strong fix to add to some of the problems we're having. Will it be a fix-all? No, but it's interesting to look at methods other towns have been doing and how that comes together. To the Council President, to the administration, switching over to D, economic developer, what is our status with that?
Sure. So as I'd mentioned, we had candidates, none were really qualified. It is one of those positions that we're looking into potentially hiring a professional, as a professional services contract, in the sense that it doesn't require someone being here 9 to 5. I think that's the reality of what we're looking, well, rather what someone in that position would be doing. Rather, it is a position that is throughout the township and really putting together a better scope, because we are a unique town. We have so many different elements to us, our zoning. We need someone, or a firm rather, who has the capacity to look into all of the different locations we're looking to potentially make improvements to. So we're engaging and soliciting with professional service contract professionals at this point to look into, who have planning experience and understand economic development.
Okay.
Because I think we need a good outline of a service like that, rather than hiring someone and putting them in office space. And quite frankly, I don't think that would be fair to anyone here. We need a plan. We need a big scope of work.
I don't disagree. I mean, I think as someone who's qualified for the position, you probably don't pay enough for that person who's qualified for this position. That's my first thought, but perhaps we can consult with somebody. When I look at this economic developer, I listen to the residents I've spoken with, and some residents are here tonight. Although some of us may disagree on certain subjects, at the end of the day, a downtown, the downtowns, or Oak Tree Road, where there are business communities, what makes up the store motif is a collective culture of different retail stores. And I'm doing my best with some volunteers to collectively go through multiple downtowns to show the difference of what some have and don't have, from a corporate downtown like Westfield to a downtown like Easton, Pennsylvania, or Kingston, New York. Each one has a different culture. I mean, you'll see more vintage shops in some areas, more record shops in some areas. How we collectively bring that here and what, how that comes together is a huge change. And as I look at all the things people talk about, how things impact the neighborhood or what's detrimental to the neighborhood. And I get confused when I hear the word detrimental because there's truly no factual evidence to what anyone has said here in this room that it's detrimental to their community, a building or some change, how we leave something blighted and how we build something new. Regardless of the height difference, investment is important. But I hope that when we do get this person, it'd be wonderful. If we don't, what homework I'm doing with volunteers, I hope could be shared or discussed with this consultant. And I would hope the same, we'll share the homework with the residents here from the Clara Barton section that are still left, the few people that are here. And with that economic development opportunity, I still ask our colleagues to plead with me on some of the things we have not discussed. We're listening to some community residents that are important, that have gotten together with other residents who disagree. Not all residents disagree with development on Amboy Avenue. Let's face the fact that we need to look at this collectively. And that's why I talk about the economic development person, so that we take a one snapshot at everything rather than just, cap the height of the place of the downtown. So I just, to the administrator, I hope we can hire a consultant. We hire consultants for grants. They do a fantastic job for $50,000 a year. Some people complain they come to the microphone. What a great investment, the amount of grants they've brought us. I'll vote for that any day of the week for the members and residents. Last, I'm going to make a strong call for affordable housing. And caught in a difficult place where I listen to residents who have come to this microphone, who have made a public statement, who have said, we don't want renters here on Amboy Avenue. We don't want them here. This is not, a fair statement to make, and we know how wrong that is. This is a factual thing that has happened here, has happened in other rooms. And I'm making a strong call for affordable housing as we want to cap this. There is, an issue here because people don't want affordable housing. And affordable housing should be looked at. Each council person here should understand the opportunity to give a family a place to live at a lower rate and it being just minimal impact on some neighborhoods, minimal, is so important. And I'm going to make it a point from now until January, we talk about affordable housing. And I will not support reducing the language of this ordinance until we have a comprehensive look at everything. I mean, we're just doing a hop, skip, and a jump over the entire, neighborhood. We're not talking to the business community. We're not sitting down like we said we would. We're not discussing parking like we said we would. There were complaints that came to this day as long, long before anyone talked about 4 stories, which was parking. In fact, Councilman John Pointer was here at the dais as a resident, talked about parking. So when it comes to affordable housing, again, I'm going to make a strong pitch at it. I will not stop. I'll be relentless. There are so many great stories with those who get a chance to live in the community and then buy something. Today was a perfect example of the lady who came here at 65 Lafayette. She moved in to a new building. She wasn't exactly happy it was perfect for her. It's an apartment. But she moved to buy a place, and now she's improving a location on Lafayette, which she's happy, and raising a family. So, I have a problem when I hear that, and I have a problem with, moving forward on some discussions without having a collective discussion on all ends, and I hope we do. So when it comes to affordable housing, again, I'm going to talk about it further. And on the student level itself, we should all know that every student who graduates is being priced out of Edison. They can't afford to live here, and they're moving someplace else because it's cheaper. And we have to look at that as we decide to change this ordinance that's been passed in 2016, and very little has been done, 3 buildings in 30 years, all right? We have to look at the opportunity for affordable housing and when it's going to come to Edison. We can't just block bus and say, we're not having it here. Because there are people who've spoke to this microphone and said they don't want it here. And we need to listen. That's all I ask, is to listen again and collectively look at each situation. Last, I just want to mention back to public safety and public works. We had a short tornado come through here, short windstorm, call it what you want. The heights of Edison and Roosevelt Park and parts of Edison were truly impacted. I was there on site to drive around. I want to thank all of our departments, from our water department handling issues with flooding, from our public works who went out there tirelessly during lightning, putting themselves in harm's way. We forget about this. But let me tell you, I stood out there for a while. I saw lightning, and I got back in my truck, and I said, I'm not doing this. And when I spoke to the director, he says, we got to be out there. We forget police department, public safety, first aid. They got to be in a place some days where you don't want to be. And I want to thank them for the work they've done and cleaning up the roads immediately and helping out to the community. So thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Coyle. Council Vice President?
Yes. Well, we discussed the Stoughton neighborhood parking permit issue, and Mr. Vitale, I'm thanking you for bringing this to our attention. Obviously, this is a discussion that will continue to be in progress. I know you have a meeting with Captain Morath later this week, I believe. Yes. So keep me posted. You have my information. Okay? All right. And back to the council meeting rebroadcast issue, and wondering where we're at in terms of moving it up to a reasonable time for our residents who cannot stay up that late to watch longer meetings. So any news on that?
Council Vice President, I had echoed to the council president as well. Just communicate that to the mayor who made that decision.
I've been addressing this at just about every work session meeting, and this is a head scratcher. I don't know why this is such rocket science. I don't understand why, because you had indicated that you were going to be discussing this, and here we are now. It's the July meeting, and I'm going to keep bringing this up until this is resolved. But this is unacceptable. And so for our seniors in particular, and for those who don't have access to computers, that they'd rather watch it, or they have to watch it on the TV. I don't understand what the holdup on this is. This is doing a great disservice to a lot of people, and particularly our seniors. So I'm hoping, I'm not going to be at the August meetings, but I'm hoping even so that I get some kind of update on this within the next month or so. This is just not acceptable. My last issue, was wondering, do we have any Adopt a Highway programs here? I had mentioned at the last work session meeting about the trash that's along some of the major avenues that we have, on whether it's Amboy, whether it's 27, or Oak Tree. And I was wondering if we have any kind of Adopt a Highway program in Edison.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I don't believe that we do. That's more of a county and state level.
So are you saying that no matter what, whether it's Amboy, I don't remember which ones are county roads, which ones are the Edison roads? Are there any of them that are the major thoroughfares that would be under just our jurisdiction where we could do Adopt a Highway?
Again, it's either county or state highways. those are the ones that would be, that are you're referring to.
All right, I guess that's something to bring up to the county. All right, thank you, that's all.
Council President,
Thank you,
can I
Councilor.
comment on her
At the
adopt
end,
highway
after
later? Okay,
everyone's
fine.
done, yeah.
Or I can speak to her separately.
Councilman Patel?
Thank you, Council President. I'll start with the first one, council meeting governance. I think, if you watch those meetings, I would recommend every single council person to go and watch the meeting, the way we conduct on these dais. There is the resident asking question to attorney is talking to council president, some council person is getting up, going in somewhere else, someone is in back room, someone in the front room. I think we need to start giving the respect to the residents as well as to the council colleagues. Again, I'm not singling out on any specific person. Most of us are on this dais. You'll hardly see me walking out unless there is an emergency. But again, I think our meetings are not that long, 2.5 hours. If you can hold ourselves on this council dais and respect the residents, respect the council colleague, and let's get to the council agenda, and then we can do whatever we want to do. Second thing is, Council President, I think, when resident is speaking and you are addressing, another councilman interrupts the meeting. Not a good idea. I would say that we all need to have some patience to wait. At the end, we can always react to each other. I'm not denying on that. But that's respect. So my whole goal is, I would say my ask, not the goal, is how do we establish giving the respect to each other? In fact, one time I did ask you and the attorney while you were talking, standing and talking while I was asking question, which was not acceptable to me. How do we improve? Because people are watching us, believe me or not, I get the feedback from the residents saying, hey, you're not behaving like adults. It's like a bunch of people sitting there, they have their own agenda and they're just discussing some line item. So I would ask everyone to think through and let's see how we can improve this process. My second topic of discussion is splash park. I don't know, I know why there is a reason that we are hiding things with the splash park. It's a good thing to have in town. Sonia, my quick question here is, this was our council woman, Joyce Ship, who pitched in this council to have the splash park. Two, in fact, half of these council members who are on this dais were not even part of back then when we approved. I don't know the exact number, but $1.7, $1.8 million for 2 splash parks. My question is how much money we spent building 1 splash park, which is half the size than what council imagined back 3-4 years ago. Do we know how much money we spent on that?
I can get that to you.
Thank you. Second thing is there is a lot of PR, there is a lot of emails, but no one definitively knows what's the process, what's the protocol, because not everyone has an email, not everyone is going to look at your Facebook post. There has to be some better way to coordinate that and have people, explain them how it's going to work. Last few weeks, residents are calling me and asking, hey, how do I register? I heard there is a splash park. Can I take my son or daughter to splash park? Again, I say it's a wonderful thing to have, but there is a disconnect. So again, I'm kind of lost myself not knowing that process. Then I looked at the email that came from a PR firm, that's my another line item here. And then I look at a Facebook, and again, this council approved the funds. I think it passed with 7-0. But mayor chose to selectively call few people and inaugurate that, which is insane. This is not for politics, guys. This is the facilities for the residents, not for your PR, not to pat on your back. It is the hard work of everyone, including DPW, and I'm not discounting mayor himself, but this council has passed the funds. So again, food of thought there. How do we respect the other people? I saw a bunch of the resolution approving the road paving program. Have we finalized the 2024 paving list, Sonia? Do you have the clear-cut list? Because I did speak about few streets, very specific, they were very bad, and I don't know they are part of this list now.
We haven't finalized the 2024 list.
Okay, The roads, okay, let me correct. The roads that are going to be paved this year.
2023.
So is that finalized, set in stone?
That's done, yes.
Okay. Do you mind re-forwarding that to me?
Sure.
So I can, thank you. Next one is very interesting. I raised this issue several times on the lawsuit. I think the first admission who has the highest number of lawsuits, which unfortunately we find that through Facebook or some WhatsApp group. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty what those lawsuits are. In fact, I did ask for the closed door session to inform the council saying what lawsuits are active, which lawsuits were settled, and what's happening in the town. Unfortunately, that's a black box. So my question to attorney is, these all lawsuits are routed through our chief. I know chief is working with administration to settle the lawsuit. Who has an authority to accept or reject the settlement? Is it the mayor himself, or is it the group of people in the administration, or how?
The less complicated version of it is that it depends on the nature of the lawsuit itself, as well as the nature of the settlement and where the funds are coming from. This council, under certain circumstances, has the authority to weigh in when it comes to paying out of funds, if that is as the result of a lawsuit, or certain other actions that are within the purview of the council itself, if that ends up being part of a settlement agreement. So if you think back to the matter with the tree planting, that was something that had to do with the release of funds, and also had to do with the planting of the trees under the ordinance in compliance with the ordinance. So that would have to come to this council for approval on the actual terms of the settlement. Some of the things that don't have to do with this council's authority would be if the money is coming entirely from the insurance company. There's no township funds being expended or paid out as part of the settlement. That wouldn't come here. And then it boils down to the nature of the suit itself, whether that is purely a mayoral decision, whether there is some other kind of factor in how they make that decision and how they arrive at that. And some of it is just you can either take this from the insurance company, you can either take this and resolve it this way, or you could be on your own about it. And so that is a determination made by the insurance company. So like I said, it's not an easy question to answer, but that's as hopefully simple as I can make it.
No, my question was very specific to the insurance company, because the lawsuits could be individual on mayor himself, or it could be on a township, or maybe a specific department. Again, there could be variation. By process is very simple, right? If someone sues the town or mayor or anyone, employee of the township, it goes to the insurance. Again, if that's the case, I'm talking very specific to insurance settlement. Who has an authority to accept what the insurance company is recommending in terms of the settlement? If the lawsuit is on mayor and mayor is the decision maker, okay, we are in conflicting situation now. So that's the reason I'm asking the process. I'm not saying that that's the case here, but I'm just asking the process.
So it's not as black and white as that, and it looks like the business administrator has something she wants to add, but
So in terms of personnel matters, that really isn't, it's a attorney-client privilege in terms of, like, if it has to do with an employee or the terms of their employment. I would be in part of that discussion as the business administrator, and alongside with the attorney. It's not one size fits all. I mean, we'd have to go into closed session to talk about the particulars of what matters your
Yeah, I don't have a question on a specific case.
Yeah,
It's
because
general process.
Yeah. So the general process, in my experience, and here and other places, if it comes to the issue of a personnel matter, then that is discussed at length with myself and the attorney and the JIF attorney. there's quite a bit because of the, not just the technical, but obviously the very sensitive topic that someone's employment could change with the township if there's potential. I mean, if there's criminal activity, that's one thing, that in itself. But there's terms of employment that could potentially change that is then discussed with a team of attorneys and myself. There could be times where, in this form of government, the mayor could be brought into those discussions, not necessarily the decision-making as a whole, but it is a team effort. Much like the JIF, as an executive member, and this is not the only JIF I've been a part of that, it is a collective conversation, decision-making, just like this body would make.
So it will be labor attorney mainly will get involved in case it's.
And that happens occasionally as well. The labor attorney is brought in, discusses,
Absolutely.
the township attorney discusses
Yes.
the matters. The mayor may not be involved depending on the nature of the matter and where the authority for making a determination derives from, the nature of the matter itself.
Will that change our policies and procedures from an employee standpoint? Those things. So at the beginning of the year, when all of you appoint professionals that we've solicited through a fair and open process, that's exactly the team that we bring in and discuss these matters.
No, understood. And the reason I'm asking the question is because I do hear that, again, I get to see these lawsuits on Facebook, in WhatsApp.
It's a very credible source.
No, but they are legitimate, by the way. Some of those are legitimate. They are settled and there is verified information. So my ask was very simple. I'm not saying in the audience, but at least in a back room, fairness of, I would say, with this council, even the attorney, you said that it's no impact to the township budget. That's not true. GIF is not paying the money out of their pocket. We are self-insured.
That wouldn't be a statement that I would be comfortable in making.
Correct, but this is self-insured, so we are ultimately responsible for that. And I don't know why this council or this body is kept in dark, not disclosing those in a closed session. I used to hear those a lot with the prior administration. This is the first administration I'm seeing. This council has no idea about what is happening unless we hear from social media, but I will leave it to.
So in practice, I don't know how it was before, but if there's any potential litigation or something in litigation, if there's a report that you're requesting, then I can certainly work with the attorneys and at the request of the council president, if there's a closed session that's being requested, I don't see an issue with that. So I'll have you guys take the lead on how you want us to proceed with reporting to you. Is that fair?
Yep, that's fair. Thank you, I appreciate that. The next one, master plan updates. I heard, my council said it was approved. I would have expected, some sort of a report to this body to understand what it means. It's approved, it's somewhere else, right? It's probably 500-page document, I don't know, 1,000-page. The way we prepare the budget document, the same way, if this council would have received the master plan which is approved, it's electronic or it's a printed copy, would have been helpful because at least we can go through and see what is there and what is not there. And the reason I'm bringing that up is, I'm sure, again, I'm not saying 100% is true, I'm sure there might be provision for cannabis business future because we don't do the master plan every day. But to bring the transparency again, to have this dialogue with the council member, have some input, hey, would you like to see some of those things or is this detrimental to some of those neighborhoods? That, again, that discussion was missing. And I felt, the whole body is in dark except the council representation of the planning board. And my last one is resolution of recognition, BAPS. BAPS is a wonderful organization completing 50 years of their community service in America, and they deserve the recognition. So I'm proposing this resolution of recognition. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Patil. Councilman Pointer.
Thank you, Council President. I do have additional comments in regards to master plan, DPW, and adopt a highway, but I will hold off until afterwards. I just want to make a note of that. The first item that I have is in regards to committee and board appointments, current vacancies. I won't go into the detail as to what's expired versus what's vacant. I will just let everyone know what boards can actually take on new members. So you have the Abilities Advisory, Cable Television, Cultural Arts, Environmental Commission, Fair Rental, Health Advisory, the Historic Commission, Human Relations, Municipal Alliance, Open Space Advisory, the Planning Board, Redevelopment Agency, which I know we've been discussing in part. Upcoming will be the Smart City Advisory Committee. The Technical Review Committee does have a position for citizens rep, but is not on the committee list. Veterans Memorial and the Zoning Board has one alternate position that's available. So for the residents' awareness, if you want to get involved, those are several committees where there are expired terms and/or vacancies where new members may be appointed. There's been discussion in regards to the economic developer. And I mentioned potential utilization because there's been comments or there's been discussion, for instance, in regards to a public advocate. We had discussion in regards to the economic developer potentially needing to be modified to include a background in planning. So if we needed additional testimony before a application, before one of the boards that let's just call it what it is. Most likely it would be before the zoning board, which means that it's not in conformance with our zoning. Therefore, having additional testimony in that aspect in regards to feedback may be viable. And I think that this position could offer an opportunity to fulfill that opportunity. In regards to the master plan, one of the items I had in here was in regards to Amboy Avenue and the redevelopment plan and general planning. I know I made many comments before, so I won't try to belabor on them, but I want to address some of the comments that were made by residents that were here before. I apologize, I lost my space. If we want to have like a vision for Amboy Avenue, we need to make sure that we're taking care of the basics first and foremost. Now, I'm not here to belittle any of our departments. I understand the township's 32 square miles, 107,000 residents. It is not a small task to achieve. However, when I'm driving down some of these side streets and there's cars parked in front of a stop sign, well, now from a safety perspective, I have cars coming in, I may not be able to get out. Additionally, you may not be able to actually see the roads because of this. Well, if we're talking about potential development where the buildings would be closer to the street, closer to the sides, it's not exactly a feel-good moment in the sense of like, hey, if we do this type of development, I'm going to become safer. If you look at the current trees that are on Amboy Avenue, a lot of them have started to grow the side branches, for lack of better terms, because there hasn't been that type of maintenance. So if we're looking at the safety aspect, if we're looking at from a visual aesthetic, we need to make sure that we're taking care of our bases. And again, I'm not trying to jab at any of the departments, but as a resident that frequents Amboy Avenue, that's what I see. A couple items that we have not talked about in regards to future planning. In the ordinance, it specifies, and I know I mentioned this before, about the maximum allowable square footage for one commercial, one business on a development. I had a conversation with someone running a restaurant who was actually looking to move from their current location. Their current location is 1,400 square feet. They're looking for a bigger location. I cannot definitively say that, hey, we're going to get these types of businesses with the current guidelines that are in there because I don't know if that actually meets their need. And let me just be upfront. If I were to start my business now instead of 2010, and I were looking at anywhere for a first-story commercial building, the cost of rent that it would cost me and the amount that I would actually need to generate in revenue to make up for that would become extremely difficult. And this is not just on Amboy Avenue, this is throughout the entire state, in my personal opinion. We talked about the design standards. Parking, I'm just going to make a crazy recommendation. We have the opportunity, in my eyes, to actually dead end some of the streets off of Amboy Avenue. And I say this because from a thoroughfare aspect, in terms of getting out of Amboy, most people either take Lafayette, 3rd Street, 4th Street, or 7th, right? That leaves all the intermittent streets not as frequented as those main thorough streets. My recommendation would be to go up to the end of the commercial depth of the block, cut that off, and utilize that for potential parking spots that we need along the block. That would help, in my eyes, A, satisfy some of the parking requirements that are needed for any potential development, and B, actually separates the residential neighborhood from the commercial block, because now you actually have a barrier in some instances. So those are some additional items that I wanted to bring to the table in regards to Amboy Avenue when we're talking about it. On the master plan, it talked about potentially rezoning some of the light industrial areas. What I would like for the council to first focus on is not necessarily the entire light industrial zones. We know that there are really two types of light industrial zones in Edison Township. You have your industrial parks, and then you have your just industrial areas. So when you take out Heller and the Raritan Center, you're left with Silver Lake, you're left with an area off of Main Street, and you're left with Jackson Avenue. It's my recommendation that we actually take those areas and create a separate LI zone that would eventually allow for different types of opportunity outside of industrial use. In my opinion, I think because of the potential COA obligations that we're going to need, you transition that from the industrial use to residential use, satisfying some of the affordable housing that we need, mitigating the industrial detriment that many residents have offered comment on. There is much to go into on that. You can't just say, hey, add residential and not consider the infrastructure, not consider the traffic potential with that. But when I'm looking at the grand scheme of Edison and its development, if we're going to look to try to make those conversions, that's where I think we should focus on. The master plan recommends historic designations, updating that. I think that we should absolutely do that. The most recent add-on to that was the St. James Church, which Walt Stossel had mentioned. This is actually the 320th anniversary of that church, so something for us to consider. And the last item, in regards to sustainable construction and general practices, I would just like to see us update our ordinances so that we have some green purchasing practices. I understand that there's a cost analysis that has to go into that type of stuff, but something that I would like for us to look into. Speaking of ordinances, I wanted to bring to attention some of the ordinances that have been drafted for consideration. One that I have not presented to the council, but just to bring it out, and actually Mr. Nasser brought this to my attention last year. Edison Township, in regards to alcohol sales on Sundays, starts at 12 p.m., whereas other municipalities on Sundays, it's 10:45 a.m. So the ask would be to update our ordinance so that we are in line from a competition standpoint to our neighbors. The second item is in regards to the PDF application requirement. I know that there was issue in regards to the placement of it online. So I would like for us to reconsider the ordinance, taking out the language for the request for it mandating to be placed online, by having the PDF application, the PDF submission as part of the application. What I'm going to do real quick is actually show the amount of paperwork that I've received this year just from the planning board. There's more. This is 4 Walmart/shopping bags worth of paperwork that I've received just this year. This does not account for the box that I have in my basement from all of 2022. Please, this is cumbersome. We need to update into the 21st century. These things are heavy. In a good form, just let go of it. The other items I just want to bring up, I know I've talked about the minimum fine for anyone that clears trees without a permit. Truck depot definition, I think that still needs to be updated. And the utility hotbox guidelines, I would like for us to update. Some items that I think we need to work on, environmental impact study. Right now, the only requirement for that type of study is for anything that is over 20 acres. Do we have many properties that are over 20 acres in Edison anymore? Not really. So I think that we should take the approach similar to what Bayonne did and have a smaller lot requirement. You can do 4 acres, 5 acres, whatever it is. But what that does is it forces an application to get a professional study done that gives background to the area and the environmental impact, as the name may suggest, of what the application and potential development would do. There was a resident that mentioned about the light trespass from a neighbor's yard. I have not been able to put together any recommendations, but some municipalities that have done similar include Jackson and Brick Township. And what they did is a variety of items in regards to height restriction, angle restriction, and the luminaires that are permissible at certain heights. So it's something that I would like for us to look into. And last year, Council President and I had started, when we were working on the billboard ordinance, put together quite a hefty draft in regards to sign regulations. Now I'm hoping that we can continue. Outside of that, just a couple of project updates for everyone's reference. In regards to the municipal broadband, we authorized the receipt of a grant that is being worked on with purchasing to be put out to bid. And I know it's been questioned, why is this needed in regards to municipal broadband for this part of the project? It's my opinion that going forward, we need this infrastructure to make sure that the township, in the event of a blackout or something similar to what happened this past weekend with Microsoft, that we have the ability to actually maintain our systems in-house. The website, I'm told that the 90-day timeline for the rollout of the website is still on track. The Edison Light Transit, there's currently work with the federal government in regards to the fundings being received, and it is currently being worked on in terms of next action steps with the health department. Finally, in regards to grant applications, Jackson Avenue, last year there was discussion about applying for a grant to widen the street. There is no update at the moment. And in the Angels soccer field, apparently we were not selected for the open space grant, but we are looking at next action steps in regards to initiating that project. I apologize for the length of that, Council President. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was very insightful. Moving on for me, I think pedestrian safety, the 3Bs program, the benches, as Council Vice President talked about, I would love to do it in-house in Edison. I did propose the area of Hale Park. The engineer asked me some questions. I am getting back to him as to exactly what the idea that I had in mind, and we're working through that. Bike racks, do we go through purchasing to get more bike racks? Do we have bike racks that we can put up in?
I would actually go through DPW, who's working much on the paths and different recreational areas, so I'd probably consult with them first.
Can we find out if we can get it at the community centers, the senior centers, if we can get some bike racks there?
Sure.
Thank you. Bathrooms, I think that's going to be a long-term project. Let's start with the simple ones first, and we'll move up to that. I know we are moving forward with the JP&L power line. I saw that we are submitting a grant. I hope we get that. And same thing with the path on Central Ave. I did ask for a visual comparison, which I am not sure if I received. It might be lost in the emails, but is that something that you can provide? I was trying to see what are we going to do compared to the plan that we originally had from the previous plan that I provided. And I wanted to compare and contrast to see how things changed. Is that something we can get, Sonia?
I don't have any updates right now, but certainly I can follow up.
Okay. And I think we already talked about for the road dieting, I will plan to meet with the residents in those neighborhoods to see what they envision and how I can help them get what they want out of in their neighborhood. In terms of town finances, we discussed the economic developer already. I do want a redevelopment agency. I am not sure how we go about getting one, because I think we do have a lot of areas in town that need to be redeveloped, and having a redevelopment agency that's specifically focused on getting things done right, maybe meeting with the residents such as Clara Barton, having those discussions, I think is important. And tax bills, we already discussed. We're giving a grace period. Lighting, Councilman Pointer discussed. And the last item was the marijuana as a gift. I did bring this up to you in email, and you said we just have to move it to the AG.
Yeah, the chief's still here. So it's an enforcement mechanism on the sale of marijuana. So it would be the same as if they were in another violation of the statute, and the AG's office has the authority to enforce those. So it's the state law that controls, I believe, and
so real quick,
I'll speak with the chief about this to see how best to approach it, since we're here and you've brought it up. But I believe it just needs to be referred to the Office of the Attorney General for them to enforce.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
The reason we're bringing this up, because there's a business in town that is essentially giving away marijuana as a gift with the purchase of something else to kind of bypass the laws. And obviously, we don't want that in town. So we are trying to figure out a way to make sure that that doesn't happen in our town. And I think the next step is to make sure that we get enforced and get that shut down.
So in the period between when it was legalized for sale and before any of the mechanisms for actually having a legal retailer were in place, this was much more of a problem. And the AG's office took the lead on cracking down on that, at the time. So that's where it would come from.
Okay. Chief?
This is the first I'm hearing about this particular issue. I will talk to legal offline, as well as our vice and narcotics unit. We'll get some insight maybe from our county prosecutor's office, and we'll move forward from that. So we just got to get some more information. If you could pass that along to legal, and then we can have a conversation from there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
And now I'll open up to Councilman Coyle. You wanted to make comments on Council Vice President, or are you okay now?
I just wanted to share, first, when some of our council members leave the dais, we also listen to the meeting while we leave the dais. And we also go and have a bathroom break. I think we're here 3.5 hours today. But while listening to Council Vice President, yes, we do have an Adopt the Highway program, and it's live and awake. I can direct you to the website. As most of the Clara Barton residents know here, one of the first adoptions happened for a highway adoption was the Route 1 exit ramp right there. So there are several you can do. You can get a sign. It's quite simple. I can direct you to the site. It's available. And again, I just wanted to comment against Councilman Patil's comment. some people leave the dais for certain reasons. It's their choice of when they leave the dais. We're elected officials. It's not a babysitting match here. We leave for 90 seconds, we come back. I apologize. Marlene, don't give me any water, okay? And I just want to impose a bathroom break. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Coyle. Just Councilman Pointer, I know you wanted to add something to Council Vice President's.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of mention what Councilman Coyle had said. The Adopt a Highway program for the state and the county is run through their Clean Communities program. So that would be your Route 1, 27, 440, 287, those types of roads. I would like for us to have a more localized adopt a spot aspect. I know I've talked about that before, but that is technically separate from the adopt a highway aspect. That is the run through the state.
Maybe that's something that you and I can talk further about.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
A question to our business administrator. This goes to the comments about the storm. If anyone has any branches that are still left over, is there someone they could contact to potentially get?
Yes, that would be DPW. You could just put a service order in and we'll go there, even after the fact.
Okay, I'll let the residents know. Councilman Patil had asked about the master plan update, if there are specific action items. At the end of the master plan is a action item guide. I will print out those sections and send it out to the council. And in regards to cannabis as a gift, it is a unfortunate workaround in regards, and look, I say this as someone that supports the legalization and retail of marijuana, but that is not what the laws are for. So what's happening is that you are permitted by law to gift marijuana to someone. That is not in and of itself illegal. However, if you were to do that and someone were under the age of 21, yes, that would technically be illegal. But what I'm hoping in these further discussions is if the state is developing those mechanisms where that becomes prohibited, for lack of better words, because the one location that is being brought up, I visited, and it's not a location where you have to be 21 to enter. And that is the concern, I think, from many of the residents, outside of the fact of whether you're for or against. It's the fact that there may be locations that utilize this loophole in the state guidelines for other uses to try to promote their business. So thank you for bringing that up, Council President. Thank you.
Councilman Pato.
Council President, about the cannabis, I did call chief as soon as I got to know this. The bigger problem is the sign outside on the door or on the glass has the cannabis sign.
Oh, yeah.
The gift is second part to this, but again, when someone is looking from the outside, they see the picture, so that motivates or to visit the store.
Yeah, I think they're not allowed to advertise with the leaf.
Yeah, no. So technically, if you are a marijuana retailer, you're not allowed to advertise with the leaf. That doesn't mean that you can't, as a non-marijuana retailer, use it in your decorative motifs because you're not selling it. It's not necessarily a loophole. It is a deliberate misinterpretation of what the law allows and then attempting to utilize that to increase your own business and to increase your own profit margins by effectively giving away the thing that you're actually selling. And that way you don't have to get licensing, you don't have to follow the regulations as to age limits, as to advertising. And that's why the AG's office cracked down on it in the beginning and to begin with. So it's something I'm going to talk to the chief about. It's something that is definitely going to be addressed. It's just a matter of the actual enforcement mechanism needs to be involved.
All right, so with that said, I think we're at the end. I just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
May I have a second?
Second.
So motion by Council Vice President, second by Councilman Pointer. This meeting is adjourned at 9:16 p.m. Oh, all in favor, sorry. Aye. This meeting is adjourned at 9:16.
Does my eye count?
That'll be my work off for the day.